Park Street if we get a chance to talk before.
Hello, and welcome to our Tuesday evening workshop. We have Mr. Craig Settlemeyer with us. Please kick it off.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Settlemeyer. I am the chair of the Lewiston Shelter Committee, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to talk with you about the license ordinance. So to remind everyone, Council has been considering a number of revisions to the license ordinance. At a previous Council meeting, you acted on some, it was more small language and grammar type changes. This committee received a document of the license with items labeled Council consideration. So there are items that City Council is drawing our attention to. And those are the items that we've responded to in the document you have in front of you. We will go through them together during this workshop. If we spoke to them all equally, it would be about 2 minutes per item, I think. Some items will probably be of greater interest than others. I guess let's maybe figure out the procedure here. First, what we're working towards, I believe, is a document that Council will want to vote on at a future Council meeting as a single action of the amendments. Is that correct? So to that end, do we, unless you were going to reserve another workshop item and so that staff can prepare that document for you, do we want to, in addition to like a discussion, make sure on each item we pause to see if there is majority support for it being included in the draft you're going to vote on? Does that sound like a good way to do it?
I think that makes some sense, yes.
Okay. Any comment from staff? All right. So I'm joined by other members of the committee behind me. Thank you all for being here. They are both here to observe, and I may call upon them to speak to any recommendations that we had where their technical expertise is of value. So I'll do that on a case-by-case basis. Any questions before we begin? All right. So the first item on page 1 has to do with the council consideration was adding in a definition of homeless using the Maine State Housing Authority definition. The committee agreed with that, and what's pasted is a pretty lengthy definition that I received from Maine Housing that is also referencing a federal definition of homeless. That's what 24 CFR subsection 576.2 is. I'm not going to read the definition aloud, but you have it in front of you. So we agreed with that recommendation.
Yeah, David, Councilor Chittum.
Well, can we use David during a workshop?
I apologize for the slip-up.
That's fine. We've got unaccompanied youth being 25 years or under. We've got in our own ordinance homeless.
Councilor Chittum, do you mind using your mic? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Aaron.
All right. Thank you. Yes. The feds define unaccompanied youth as being under 25 years of age. Our ordinance talks about 21 and younger. The state of Maine recognizes majority at 18. We have a number of different ages, and I'm sure that each one of those references goes to a particular section of either state, federal, or local statute, but it's confusing as heck. And I wonder if there's a way that we in Lewiston at least can have a consistent age throughout all of our ordinances.
So I'm going to invite Chris up to speak. My initial understanding is that basically, youth, there are overlapping definitions of youth, and to some extent that gives youth more options in terms of the programs they access. It may not necessarily create problems in terms of what we're trying to do, but I think Chris is best suited to speak to that question.
Thank you for the question. So the three kind of definitions of youth under the age of 18 is children nationally. The 21 for the state of Maine is based on the licensing regulations for youth shelters in the state. And so our shelters can work with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds up to their 21st birthday. The federal definition that goes up to 24 for youth is really talking about the developmental phase of adolescence and brain development, and that adolescent brain development tends to stop at about 24 to 26 for females and males. So just that definition is really about how to think about people, not necessarily to kind of categorize them as an age group, but to think of them as developmentally different from older adults. I think for the purposes of this ordinance, this is a low barrier adult shelter. It would be fine for the city to adopt the federal ordinance. The gray area for youth shelters in this state, it gives the licensing for the youth shelters gives the young person themselves the opportunity to decide whether they want to stay in a youth shelter or an adult shelter. And so they can choose the definition for themselves based on what they feel is the safest or most necessary for them.
Okay, this ordinance would apply to all shelters, youth shelters, low barrier, high barrier, every shelter that's licensed in the city of Lewiston, this would apply to.
So you might want to have two definitions, have the federal definition and then put for youth shelters in this city, it has to follow the state definition because we can't operate outside of the state licensing regs for our shelter anyway.
Okay, and to my understanding, the state even is a little bit inconsistent because they talk about people who are 21 years or younger, which
Yes.
means up to 22.
Yep.
That's considered a homeless youth.
Yep.
And that's from the state definition?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, go ahead.
You go, and then I'll add something.
When we look at our shelter, we have young people as young as 10 in our shelter and as old as the highest allowable. We voluntarily kind of parse that, and we don't allow anyone 5 years older than the youngest person in our shelter, and the state is fine with that because the broader age differential really creates challenges. And if you also look at statutory rape laws, a 5-year difference creates statutory rape. So if there was any contact between like a 14-year-old and someone who's like less than 5 years old, that doesn't constitute statutory rape, but if there is, there isn't. So we want to avoid any conditions in which that was a possibility, and so we limit our age range based on that. But other than that, we really look at the state licensing and allow those young people in, and I think there has to be both.
And I'll add that Chris was involved on the previous committee that helped draft the language for the license. So the original language that was in there was consistent with what we need at the local level to make sure that our youth shelters can operate properly.
I mean, the only other recommendation I would make is you could put something in this statute that says Lewiston utilizes the state licensing regulations as their monitoring or governance of youth shelters, rather than having a whole separate section in this license to define the difference between a youth shelter and an adult shelter. So you could license adult shelters and then lean on the state licensing regulations as kind of a, I don't know how that would work. Staff would have to figure that piece out.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Anytime you try and repeat regulations,
Right.
you run into, well, there's an error there, and now we've got conflicting rules. And
Yeah.
so if we can reference.
And the state, for children's residential facilities, which this falls under, they have the authority to monitor us and to regulate us legally. And so I think they have a higher authority than the city would. And so to fall back on that, I don't think you'd have any liability doing that.
Okay, thank you,
Yep.
sir.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add, I'd have to look at it, I guess, take another pass with that question in mind, but I don't think that there's much that it's doing uniquely to regulate, like what the local ordinance is doing to regulate youth shelters. It only sort of comes into play with a few unique things around the question of, like, I think shelter beds and, family services and things like that. But we're not, like, this license, other than requiring that shelters be licensed, it's not with the exception of one section that we'll actually get to,
Right.
really requiring extra, licensing for youth shelters.
Thank you.
Councilor Najin, did you have a question?
Just to comment on the wording in here. So we know that if we just adopt the language that's in there from main housing, we're going to have modify it every time. And so every time it changes, right? And so the thought may be to, to refer to both the articles of definition for main housing as well as the federal government, and to say that the precedence is given to the main state housing definition. If
Where there's a
for-
conflict.
Where there's a conflict, and then if it's not regulated by the federal or state, or defined by the federal or the state, I guess that's the purview of the municipality, but I think that pretty much covers it, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable approach.
Okay.
Should we repeat that for everyone's benefit? Your suggestion is that rather than pasting the definition, which may be amended by the federal government at some point, you're saying the definition should reference the federal section, 24 CFR,
As well as main housing's guidelines.
as well
So-
as main housing's definition.
So basically.
And include a clause that says where there is any disagreement between the two, the main housing definition is superior.
Yep, correct.
So, at some point, Mayor, I guess, either, I'll look to you to see if folks are ready to do the poll.
Right.
Or how you want to do it.
Thank you. Councilor Najin, was there anything else?
No, I'm just trying to think of an easy way to insert this when we know that the language could change over time.
Understood, thank you. Councilor Chittenden, did you have something?
No.
Could you use your mic?
No.
Okay. So are we, the rest of the council, comfortable with this suggestion?
Yes.
You feeling good about this, Mr. Settlemyer?
Yes.
Yep, I think it's a good approach.
Okay. Looks like we have consensus on that then.
Okay, the next one was a bit more simple. I guess presuming that this definition of homeless family is remaining in here, which I'm not sure if what we just discussed changes that, but the language was caregivers, persons, and we thought that should be either just caregivers, which is what we recommended, striking persons, or making caregiver singular and persons plural, caregiver persons, so that caregiver is an adjective rather than a plural noun. So that's a simple one. Strike persons.
I think we're good. Without strong objection, I think we're good.
Okay. Next one. Let me see. So the council consideration, remove the reference to the land use code and replace with the full definition. Remove the reference and replace with the definition, or remove the reference and replace with a new definition. That was option 2. So the committee partially agreed with option 2. We wanted to see, sort of for the reason that was mentioned before, we wouldn't want the land use code definition and this one, given that they're currently the same, we wouldn't want them to become different. So we should basically change one and then cross-reference it. But we are proposing a definition that's very close to what council had proposed in option 2, with a small modification. So it should include beds arranged in large common rooms as an acceptable form of accommodation. Without that change, the only options are dormitory style arrangement or dwelling style, or a combination of dwelling and dormitory. But the way we see most shelters being done is through beds arranged in large common rooms.
Councillor Sol.
So on option 2, I think I read somewhere it just takes out the whole middle section, where it says homeless shelters that serve survivors of domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual exploitation are exempt from items 4 and 5. And one of those is someone with an outstanding warrant. Is that something that is going to be removed? I understand not identifying themselves for those purposes.
So I think that that section is kind of redundant of something that exists elsewhere. So that we will get to those rules in another part of this on,
Yeah, I have it covered
Yeah,
on the
on
other
page
pages
6.
as well. I just
Yeah.
didn't want to get past here.
Right.
And have it be approved, so.
Yep. Yeah, I think I guess my suggestion would be let's flag that. I'm hesitant to make you watch me read through it, but I believe that we did look closely at that, and it's basically just covered by another section, so it didn't
Yeah,
seem
it's like
necessary to have it
It's like
twice.
2 pages ahead, so, okay.
Thank you for that question.
Councillor Harmon, did you have something?
I just wanted to add that I like taking it out of the land use code and having it just be in the ordinance, because if it's in the land use code, then anytime a change needs to be made, then it has to go through the planning board as well. So it just makes it more cumbersome.
So you're saying you like the recommended definition and having it located in the ordinance and have the land use code reference it,
Yes.
to the extent that the land use code needs to. Yeah.
Councillor Chittum.
Oh, that raises an interesting question. If the land use code is using the definition of homeless shelter that resides in the licensing ordinance, and the definition in the licensing ordinance is changed, does that mean the planning board has to weigh in on it because it's referenced in the land use code? We could get ourselves into a real sticky wicket here. I agree that it ought to be one place or the other and not both. And I feel that there ought to be a definitions section for the entire Code of Ordinances. And every chapter and every appendix relies on that single definition section. But that's a bigger task than we're ready to tackle tonight.
Councillor Chittum. Councillor Najin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one question I'd have on that is, all of the changes that would normally go before the planning board or land use code, can we make sure at the end of this meeting that those are packaged up so that they can go before the planning board to get any feedback before we go to vote on like a first or a second draft? I think that there's probably language in several places that they may need to look at. And also, I do value the feedback and opinion of the planning board as well, so.
That makes sense to me. That sounds like maybe a staff question?
We're addressing the changes in the licensing. The planning board doesn't have any control over the licensing, what you're discussing now. So I think if we make these changes, and if those changes are affecting the planning board, but as Councilor Chittum refers to, they're referring to the licensing. So I think we're good with the licensing. I'll check with our planning board, but I'm thinking if we just address this, that if they refer to licensing, we should be fine with that. Because planning board has no control over what we're discussing tonight.
Just the land use code pieces, like the only thing I'm thinking about is just like any type of hang up that would cause, something to be kicked down the road for then planning board to look at, to then come back to us after we've attempted to approve something. That's all I'm thinking about. So I guess we can make sure that.
We'll see what the changes are, and then I'll refer it to Code and Planning to bring it up to Planning Board.
Thank you very much.
Unless Mr. Saddlemeyer wants to do that, but I think I'll take that over.
That was quick. Councillor Chittum, yes.
May I suggest we take a straw poll on approving the definition of homeless shelter that has been recommended by the committee, which includes the beds arranged in large common rooms. It's that one paragraph on this, in the blue section on the third page.
Yes, are we fine with the committee recommendation? I think we're good.
Okay. Page 5. Council, option 1, remove the reference and replace with full definition. Option 2, remove definition completely. So the committee agreed with option 2, just removing the definition of no barrier shelter. No barrier shelter is not allowed by the license in its current form. So I think that's why council was what they were getting at, so that made sense to us. But whether it's defined or not, a no barrier shelter is not permitted in the city of Lewiston.
I think we're good.
Okay. Page 6. The council consideration was to remove item 1, applications shall be made in writing using a form prepared. So we sort of deferred to council on that. This seemed like a procedural thing. I imagined council had a reason why they felt strongly about this, but we didn't disagree with it.
Councillor Chittum?
I'm showing my age here, but perhaps the clerk can refresh my memory. Did we decide that we did not want to have applications submitted on forms prepared by the city for that purpose?
Right. Staff has a concern with the recommendation to remove that phrase, so I'm not really quite sure where that came from. I don't recall specifically the conversation in the workshop. We can certainly go back and look at the tape. It's possible that the wrong section is referenced. The staff would have a concern about eliminating the application for uniformity and just review by staff.
Yeah.
So if I may, it wasn't we did not mean to recommend that there should be no application. We definitely think there should be. Because this made it to us,
Yeah.
I assumed that there was language somewhere, like basically how people submit applications was already covered by city ordinance. So that was where I was presuming the origin of this came from. So if Kathy has a problem with it, then I would say we should not change it.
Yeah, I would, Councillor Chittum, did you have something else?
Well, yeah, I wanted to continue this line of discussion. I think there may have been a stenographer's error or something, because do other councilors remember that we considered removing this application, section 1?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, we do, Councillor Soul.
You questioned who had to make the 12 copies, and as long as it wasn't on the city to make those 12 copies, if I remember correctly.
That was section 2, which talks about 12 complete copies. So I think it may be a mistake, a misunderstanding, and I would suggest that we thumbs up not talking about section 1 at all. Leave it as is.
I would tend to agree if staff's against it and we can't remember how we got here. I think we have our answer. Councillor Nagy?
Same, based on staff recommendation, obviously, don't change it, so.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
All right, continuing on. There's a number of items here. This is the bottom of page 6. So the first council consideration was to remove, option 1, remove alcohol reference in 3B2, which are in possession. So I'll just read it aloud so folks can follow. The homeless shelter registers guests upon entry, and service is declined to guests who do not, service is declined to guests who do any of the following. Number 1 is carry weapons or exhibit violent behavior. Number 2 is are in possession of alcohol, illegal substances, or drug paraphernalia. So with regards to that item 2, option 1 from the council consideration was to remove the alcohol reference. The committee discussed that a bit, but recommended against option 1, advising that alcohol should remain on the list because its presence too easily creates the opportunity for use or conflict between guests over its potential use. And there's another, I'll stop there before I talk about the next part.
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. I made a comment about this when we addressed it the first time, and I want to clarify that I am not at all opposed to having shelters individually proscribe the use of alcohol in their facilities. I don't feel that it's the position of the city, and I've talked to many people about this, and I came very close to changing my mind. So this is not a hill I'm going to die on, but I don't think it's the city's responsibility to proscribe legal substances. If we start down this road, then the next thing we're going to do is say in our ordinances that, I think it's kratom, one of these things that is completely legal, but I'm told is a very dangerous, readily available and legal drug. It's being advertised on some of the smoke shops. Pornography, all kinds of things that are legitimate. If we start saying, well, you can't have those because of the city ordinances, we've started down a slope. I'm all in favor of individual shelters saying part of our operating plan is that we do not admit people who are in possession of alcohol. I'm fine with that. So I just wanted to make that clear. And again, I feel strongly about it, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah, the committee talked about this one for a while, but that in the end, that is where the majority of the committee landed was the recommendation you have before you. Well, yeah, I'll leave it at that. That is the committee's recommendation.
Part of what we're doing here is putting best practices into this ordinance, and I just can't see that allowing alcohol or allowing people who use the shelter to drink could result in anything good. So yeah, I'm agreeing with the committee recommendation to keep it in there. Further comments from the council? Yes, Councilor Longchamps.
I definitely think that we should keep it. With all due respect, Councilor Chittum, I don't know if you've ever really been around people that are heavily intoxicated, but unfortunately I have, and it can be a very, very dangerous situation, so it absolutely has to stay in my opinion.
Councilor Sol.
I agree with Councilor Longchamps. I'm a former bar owner for many years, and alcohol is just adds chaos. So I would like to see that stay in as well.
How are we, the rest of us, feeling about this? You're gonna keep it in? That's the question. Okay. I think we're good here. Mr. Sattermeyer.
Okay. Option 2 was to add marijuana to the prohibited list, and the committee had no comment on that one.
Yes, Councilor Chittum.
Well, I was just going to read aloud again.
Go ahead.
This is not to make the case one way or the other, just to remind everyone that what it says currently is are in possession of alcohol, illegal substances, or drug paraphernalia. So given the survey you just did, alcohol still in, illegal substances or drug paraphernalia are covered. So yeah, we had no comment on marijuana.
Councilor Chittum.
My only comment is that here we go on that slippery slope. If if the city feels that it's within its purview and its responsibility to proscribe marijuana in any licensed homeless shelter in the city, that's the next step on. You can't come in here because you have banned reading material. So I don't feel that marijuana ought to be prohibited under city ordinance. Again, if an individual shelter wants to say, we do not allow marijuana use, that's fine, and I'm all on with that, but I don't think it's the city's responsibility.
Councillor Najin.
I was just going to echo what Councillor Chittum was saying, but I do think there is a point where, so if paraphernalia isn't permitted, that obviously means that like pipes would not be allowed, right? So you're talking basically just flour and edibles. I think is the questionable substances, because there's a lot of delivery methods that could be used for multiple different forms of drugs, both legal and illegal. So I honestly think that it's up to the individual shelter concerning how they want to manage those pieces, but I do think the best practices indicate that you don't want people using any substances within a shelter.
One second, Councillor Glenn. Councillor Roy, what would you like to comment on this? What are some shelter policies in the state regarding this?
To be honest with you, I haven't really looked at any shelter ordinances or policies at this point.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, just curious. We're good. Councillor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. I am for it to be in there, however, I will say. You know, the problem I have is somebody bringing in a tray of brownies and people who shouldn't have marijuana getting marijuana, just like someone bringing in alcohol who could pass it around to the people. You know, we're not going to search them and they have a little baggie in their pocket or something like that. You know, they're going to get it in the door because we're not going to search people. But I have a concern of somebody bringing cookies and candies and things, and we could have some younger individuals in there or individuals that have problems that can't be around that stuff. So the more specific we are, and certain things will give a better edge to the people who are going to operate the facility. And that's where I would go with that. You know, I just feel that the chance of that happening could be there, and because it's a chance, by putting that in there, they know they can't, you know, they're gonna, you know, the people at the door aren't gonna search them. They're not gonna look for, they're really not gonna look for pipes or bongs or anything else, right? Technically, we're not searching people. However, if somebody comes with a tray of brownie or a big bag of cookies, one might wanna ask if that's a possibility. That's where I stand.
Tim, if I could just add, I'd like to clarify for folks that the language in this ordinance does not prohibit a shelter from doing searches if that's part of their policy. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure it's clear when we say we don't do searches, shelters could do searches under the language as it is and as it's proposed.
Correct, and what I'm saying is we are not requiring searches in
That
the
is true.
ordinance, because it's up to the individuals. So I agree with that.
Thank you, Councillor Glant and Mr. Sattlemeyer. Councillor Najin.
It comes back to the point that Councillor Chittum was making, you know, like kratom and salvia are both legal drugs that you don't really want anybody on inside a shelter, in a shelter, congregate care facility for sure. But then again, it requires a delivery method. So you have to smoke it, I think, in both cases, which means you need a pipe. But anyway, I don't know how much time we really want to waste on this. If there was no feedback for option 2, I'm fine with leaving it undefined as well and allowing. I could easily see how something that's a legal substance could create some issues if we're banning it on a municipal level, whereas if the shelter itself says we don't want this in our shelter, that's fine. You know, that's just what I'm thinking, so.
How are the rest of us feeling about it? Do we add marijuana? Or sorry, Councilor Glant, did you have something else? And please use your microphone.
Remember, the option is to add marijuana, so be aware, if you vote up, you want to add marijuana. If you vote down, you don't. I just want to make sure that's clear for everyone in the council.
Thank you. Yes. So do we want to add it or not? It looks like we are no. 1, 2, 3. It looks like we are not. What are you doing? It looks like we are not.
We're voting.
We are not adding it at this point, based on my count.
Okay. Continuing on. So the next item is regarding identification. We talked about this a bit last time. I'll just remind folks. So we're still in this section of these items where these conditions upon which a guest could be or must be denied entry by any licensed shelter. And as it's written, it says, service is declined to guests who do any of the following. Item 4, refuse to identify themselves. So our committee has recommended striking this item because it conflicts with the recommended best practices, also conflicts with Maine Housing's priorities for funding. I wanted to invite Rebecca up to speak to it, just to share another perspective on the issue of identification. Since we talked about it a lot last time, we'll probably talk about it a bit this time as well. So I'll ask Rebecca to introduce herself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all. My name is Rebecca Austin, and I'm the Executive Director of Safe Voices. So I can certainly speak to the issue of folks identifying themselves. I think there's kind of a couple different things to think about first. When you're thinking about identifying, you have to first ask, how are you defining that? Is that requiring people to show an ID? That's oftentimes what that means when there's a requirement to identify yourself. So if we're working off of that assumption that we're going to require folks to provide an ID, I think it's really important to keep in mind the population that we're looking at serving in a general population homeless shelter, and the fact that a lot of them are not going to have an ID. You know, these are folks who are moving in and around from different locations. Perhaps they have been unhoused for a long period of time, and they might not have an ID. So is that going to be a barrier that we want to put in place for them to even be able to access the shelter? And, you know, best practice around that says that requiring an ID is not something, it's not where you want to create the barrier. Now, that's not to say that your providers working in the shelter aren't going to know who these folks are. Most of the people who are going to be coming into a general population shelter in this community are going to be known to the people who are staffing this shelter. There are people who are working with these individuals already. They're working with them in a lot of different capacities. So most of the folks coming in are going to be known. And if they are completely unknown to the providers, requiring the ID doesn't mean that you can't, like if you don't have the requirement for an ID, it doesn't mean that you can't be asking someone to identify themselves. It can't mean that you're not working on helping them get an ID. In the services section of shelter providers, you're often working with someone to say, okay, you're in our shelter, you now have a roof over your head. So what's the plan? What's gonna happen next? And you're gonna start working with them on what are those top goals. The top goals are always going to be long-term housing and employment, sobriety, whatever those barriers are for them to be successfully housed. And you're not going to be able to do a lot of those things without having an ID. So for us at Safe Voices, we're operating a shelter that does not require IDs for a number of different reasons. One, because it's a requirement of us through our federal regulations. But we are working with every person who comes through our doors to get an ID. If they don't have one, it's one of the very first things that we're doing on our intake to say, you know, do you have a license? Or do you have a state-issued ID, a passport? And if you don't have one of those things, we're working with them to find out how do they fill out the application. how do we help them get their birth certificate? They're going to need a birth certificate and a social security card and a state-issued ID of some form to get housing, to get employment. So those, to me, when you're thinking about the services that are offered, that falls in the service bucket of shelter providers as opposed to the barrier of being able to come in. And so that's why we're really recommending that requiring someone to identify themselves, to show an ID, is going to create a barrier that you're going to have a lot of folks who are now not going to be able to access that service and be able to kind of take those next steps and find permanent housing and work with their case manager or their provider to be able to do that. Oftentimes, the biggest concern that comes up with taking that out is around safety. And so again, I think most of the folks who are coming in are going to be known. The folks who aren't known are going to fall into a bucket of people working to get their ID. They become known to the shelter providers pretty quickly. Even though you might be housing a lot of people in a congregate shelter, no one's really kind of hiding away. You know, you've got staff who are there generally 24 hours a day who get to know the folks and who are working with them. And I think, again, it comes down to that service. How is the relationship between the shelter provider and your local law enforcement? Are they working together? Are they collaborative partners? When there's safety concerns, that relationship is going to mean a lot more than requiring someone to show an ID in the practical, everyday sense.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Soul.
Thank you for giving that definition. When I read this, the first thing that I think of is them just refusing to give you their name, that they're not going to identify themselves. This doesn't say that they don't have to show an ID. That to me would be something different. But I wouldn't want to remove this just because I have a question. It might be for Director O'Malley. Administrator, I'm sorry, O'Malley. The police department, can you still go to the police department and get, I don't know what you would call it, and you're not going to walk away with a photo ID, I'm sure, but the verified?
They don't get a photo ID, and I think I know what you're asking me. What I think it's 6 shelters that privately run in the city right now, they have requirements where any guests that are going to come stay there, they first have to go to the police department. We have a form that is filled out where they'll go to the lobby and they'll run a records check on them to make sure there's no active warrants. And then the officer will sign that form with the person's name and date of birth and hand it to them, and then if they're going to Hope Haven or St. Martin's or wherever they're going, they have to produce that, so they'll allow them in.
Okay.
But they do not get any type of ID from the police department. They have to, show up and identify themselves, and there's a warrant check is run on them.
Okay.
And then if there's a warrant, they get arrested, and if there isn't, they go to whatever shelter they have.
Which means a lot of them don't want to be identified, probably. if
I
they
don't
have a
know those
warrant.
numbers, but that's the process that's in place.
So is that something that could be used for this shelter that we're working on?
Are you asking me?
I was asking Craig.
So background checks are not required. Yeah, background checks are a barrier, and background checks, to Rebecca or Chris, are better experts, but background checks are very much in conflict with best practices around accessing a shelter. So
So if they go to the door and they don't want to even give you their name, that's okay? Yeah?
So are you asking, what we're recommending this provide, or are you asking what I think is okay or not? Well, and maybe I don't want to evade your question. What we're getting at is we're trying to set a floor for what we're requiring shelters to do, and then their policies can be more restrictive if they think that's best. There's a need there's a lot of people in the community that need help, and for people interested in just sort of the human aspect of like getting people help because it's like the right thing to do. And then there's also people interested in seeing folks who just should not be on the street for other concerns like public safety and things like that. Those are folks that are having trouble accessing services right now. And our intent with our recommendation is to make sure that we could have a shelter that can help those people that are not getting served, that are stuck on the street, get the support that they need. And our recommendation is based around the idea that we're concerned that if it's too restrictive, we're not going to be able to help those folks move off the street. So I think, as Rebecca described, we think it's important that people are asked, like, what is your name? Who are you? Like, those questions should be asked. I think that the shelter should be trying to get as much about their identity as they can upon entry. All of the guests still need to register. Like, that is part of the requirement of the license, is that they register upon entry. What we're getting at, the assumption we're operating under is that, as written, refuse to identify themselves means refuse to provide documented identification. And that if a mentally ill person shows up at a shelter at midnight and the shelter allows people to enter at midnight, and they don't have that written identification, but they say, my name is Sam and I need help, it's wintertime and it's cold out, that shouldn't, because they don't have that ID, and many people will not, that they shouldn't be denied service at that point of entry. That's what we're trying to solve for.
And I don't want to deny anyone shelter. I have a heart.
I know you do.
It just doesn't make sense to me. It's a mountain that I will die on. Like, I just, people need to be identified. We can't, to me, I just see it as a really unsafe situation, and it takes just one person to make all these wonderful intentions to go really bad. And that's my worry. That's my concern. I mean, you're not going to know who's coming through those doors. I mean, I know you say, a lot of them are known or they get to be known, but there could be just one that you don't, and that's too big of a risk for Lewiston, I think.
I think the question that raises for me would be, again, back to, is the requirement that they provide an identification, or is the requirement that they provide a name, right? Because if the barrier is that they simply have to provide a name, then are we really increasing safety if we're saying you can provide any name? Just how am I supposed to address you? Give me a name. And does that change, does that increase the safety or not if it's not then requiring an ID? And the reality is many of these folks who are in need of this service are not going to have that identification that they can provide, whether it's something that they've lost along the way or something that they've never had. I think about our young folks who might be coming in, who might be 24, 25 years old. They may have never had an ID. They may have never been in possession of their birth certificate or their social security card. The path for them to get an ID might be incredibly difficult. And so are we going to turn them away because they don't have that identification that's required?
That's a tough, I don't want to answer that question. Because no, I wouldn't want to turn anyone away. But again, it's a safety thing for me,
And are there ways that
marinate
the
on it.
safety can be better addressed through the shelter policies and practices as opposed to an ordinance? I think would be the other thing to consider.
Thank you.
Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 quick points. First, the ordinance is a guideline for whoever's going to apply, so they can have tougher rules if they want to, or other restrictions. I'd like to ask the deputy administrator over there a question. If I go to the police department and I say my name's John Doe and I was born in 1962, and you run it and nothing comes up, are you going to give me a slip of paper? Because there's no warrant, nothing out there?
They would have to be able to identify you.
So if they can't
Right,
identify...
well, if they ran a record and it comes back and you had a license at some time or a state ID, there'd have to be something. They're not just going to say, okay, John Doe, he's good to go, he doesn't have it. They'd have to make sure that you are John Doe with that date of birth.
So my point being is the 24-year-old she just described won't have that and can't go to the police station to get any ID. So then what do we do? So that's the circumstances we're looking at in a process that's designed to help people, not hinder their chance to get into some form of recovery, some form of an ID to move forward. So that's where I stand with wanting to approve it this way, because I think that's the fair way to do it.
Councilor Najin.
So there's a couple of things that I just want to to point out. One, if you refuse somebody access to the shelter, they're currently in a zero barrier shelter situation, just in the wild, somewhere on the streets, right? Maybe behind your house, maybe on Park Street, wherever they may be. And in that space, there aren't trained crisis counselors who have been taught de-escalation. Another piece to just think of is right now we have people who are on 13, 14 sets of bail conditions, right? And so like ultimately if we send somebody to the police department to be arrested for a petty crime or a property crime, they're probably going to be released right then as well. And then they'll just have another charge that they'll have to deal with at some point in time. And this is just something that happened years and years ago, but there was a case where there was a woman being transferred from one municipality to another to check into a domestic violence shelter. And that information was carried on the radio, and the husband was a county sheriff, and he was there when the woman arrived, and she was assaulted. And so these things happen as well. There are reasons, I think, to have that first point of contact when people are in crisis mode, to be welcoming and accommodating in order to identify need, and because ultimately we do want everyone who checks into a shelter to eventually pay their fines if they have fines, to face their day in court if they have to go to court. But the process, I think, is contact, triage, and then building them up to a place where they can hopefully have some agency. So.
Councillor Longchamps, did you have something?
Yes. So I have lots of the homeless population frequent my store often, and there are so many times where I'll actually help them get ID. I'll pay for it. I'll bring them. And then they'll come in a week later crying because someone has stolen their only pants they had, which had their ID in there. And so I have full confidence in Caden's Kitchen and the folks that he'll be, having work there in that organization, that they're going to know 90% of the people. And I also think of, there are so many people that carry IDs, that drive, that have businesses, that carry on every day, that have active warrants. So I think it's going to be really difficult to require something like that. I think it'd be unfair to refuse someone, especially for something that is completely out of their control. And again, I see it all the time. So that's my opinion.
Councillor Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something I can speak on. But right now, if you've never been homeless and never had your identification, your social security card, your license, anything stolen before, to get that back takes an act of, God, and if you do not have help trying to do that and break down those barriers, you're forever going to be without it, unless you have help. And that's one thing that Caden's Kitchen can do in this situation. They already build trust throughout the community. These people will give that staff the time of day to get their stuff. And then again, if I've stolen a license, I could show it to anybody. You wouldn't know who I am anyways, right?
Did you know this about Subway? As you may have heard.
I didn't know that. But thank you.
If audience members in the council chamber could please silence their phones, I would appreciate it. A couple of points here. So just because you have identified yourself doesn't preclude you from causing trouble later, for which you'll need to be removed from the shelter. And then, what you're really talking about, Rebecca, is, philosophy here. We're meeting people where they're at, and then helping them move forward in their life. And, and this is a practice that exists in shelters across the state, and it seems to be working well. I don't think we need to second guess that here, and I recommend the committee recommendation. Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. I'm fully in favor of removing that as a barrier to entry, and I'd like to follow up. I think you and I, Ms. Austin, talked about the fact that there are different funding levels available, and that if a barrier of requiring identification is imposed, that will reduce the amount of funding that's available for low-barrier shelters. So from a practical standpoint, that's a reason to remove this barrier by requiring identification. Did I understand that correctly when we spoke?
You did, and I can provide the numbers too if it's helpful for the council. So right now, there are two different levels of shelters. One is called a no-barrier shelter, or a low-barrier shelter, I should say. And the non-low-barrier shelters per bed night on a yearly average right now, and these numbers change as more beds are introduced, the number goes down because there's a certain allotment for the whole state. But right now, if this shelter were in operation and getting reimbursed per bed nights as a higher barrier shelter, they would get $2,512 per year per bed from the state. If it is a low barrier shelter and the requiring of IDs is one of those conditions, you can't require an identification to be considered a low barrier shelter, the reimbursement would be $3,140 a year per bed per year. And so that's about almost a $630 difference. And so that does make a significant difference for shelters operating under low barrier funded versus higher barrier.
Councilor Sol.
So my only concern with that is yes, you get more funding, but it doesn't, I don't feel like that's a great reason for having no ID. We have a whole city to think of, not just the homeless. And for me, I don't see it as a safe option. We talk about trauma and all these things. Well, the whole city was traumatized, and I just see a lot of stuff coming down the road that may not be so helpful. I have all the confidence in Kevin and Caden's Kitchen. Maybe it's just the program that I might have some issues with. So, but thank you. I know we're running out of time. So.
At this point, unless we have a councilor who wishes to add some, yes, Councilor Longchamps.
God, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Pending Councilor Longchamps remembering what she was going to say. At this point, how does the council feel about taking the committee's recommendation to strike that language? I think we're going to be striking that, Mr. Saddlemeyer.
Okay. Thank you.
And then, in your best estimation, Mr. Saddlemeyer, so it is currently 6:59 according to my clock, and we still have several pages to get through. What is your best guess and how long that might take?
It all depends on how much council would like to discuss each item. I think that was the most difficult one. I do think there will be some others of interest. I think it's possible we could do the rest in 30 minutes or less, but
I will take.
I guess it would maybe require a motivation on everyone's part to streamline their comments and.
Yeah, I mean, given that our future workshop schedule is jammed, is that right, Administrator O'Malley?
Well, we do have one on the 1st, but if we want to come in a little early at 5:30, we could do that October 1st.
I would recommend to the council that if we accept Mr. Stoudemire's recommendation, or best estimate, that'll take about 30 minutes, we go ahead and finish it just so we can wrap this up, and then start our meeting late accordingly. Councilor Harriman, did you have something?
Yes, I would propose that we set up another workshop. I mean, we have, the shelter isn't going to start operating for several months at this point, so there's not really a rush to get through this and get these changes made. So I would say we do another workshop of at least 30, possibly 60 minutes, either next month or in November.
Is Mr. Saddlemeyer available on October 1st, I guess is the big question I have.
And if we are scheduling another workshop, it should be an hour. Counselor Najin, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as far as the applications are concerned for funding, like, nothing in here is going to hold that process up at this point. Okay. So I would also favor a meeting separate from tonight.
Yes, Counselor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd ask fellow councilors to look this over in detail and get your questions in advance so we can speed through. Many of these, we agreed with you all, so that should be a pretty quick thing to walk through, but look at them and maybe have some thoughts in advance to our recommendations. And if you could get them to the chair or the co-chair so that we can be prepared, sometimes we've done that, it would also speed the process up.
How do our co-chairs feel about that?
That's fine. I am available the 1st of October. Brian's
Okay, we'll
question.
do 5:30 then.
We'll see if we can get you pizza, Mr. Saddlemeyer.
That's not necessary.
Counselor Najin, did you have something else?
No, just to be continued, so.
Yes. All right. Well, I appreciate the council, appreciate Mr. Saddlemeyer and all the committee members. This concludes our workshop for this evening, and we are going to start our council meeting here very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I remembered what I wanted to say.
What were you going to say?
All I was going to say was...
Hello, and welcome to our Tuesday evening council meeting. We're going to kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance. In the audience, we have one of our super volunteers, Mel Hamlin, for the Balloon Festival. Please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much, Mel. We also have our other super volunteer, Kathy McDonald, here. Thank you so much. Do we have, councilors, do we have Lewiston leads this evening? Anybody? Nope. Okay. Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready to begin.
Great, all roll call votes for this meeting will be given to the Councilor of Ward 2.
And we have, I understand we have minutes to accept.
Yes, minutes for the September 3rd meeting.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Glant.
Second.
Second by Councilor Najin. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
and Ward 1.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now up to public comment. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office.
Matthew D. Agron, Ward 4. First, fix the public comment rules. You guys have taken forever on that. Now, we've had the public release of both the redacted reason why Heather Hunter really left us and the report on why she left. She left not for medical reasons that we were told at the time, but because she felt City Hall had become a hostile work environment. And she filed formal complaints against both Mayor Shalene and Councilor Scott Harriman, talking about how she'd been subject to bullying and male chauvinism with her interaction with them. I have to agree with her. The City Code Office should not be playing favorites with any business in the city. If they can help a business navigate the rules when they need help, yes, but do not bend them because somebody's favorite is having issues. These rules must apply to everyone equally, or we have no rules at all. Now, in the report that was provided by Toby Tyner Jr. into his investigation of these charges, the very heavily redacted report ended up with, after him investigating and interviewing all of 6 witnesses, some of the highlights we could see, and we couldn't see much of it, was Heather Hunter, as city administrator, did not feel comfortable meeting with the mayor alone, so had Brian O'Malley present for most of them. Heather Hunter was viewed by the city staff as good, loyal, and productive employee, who most of them wanted to have stay on, but they felt there was no way her relationship could be repaired or reversed. There were a number of letters of support from city department heads following her resignation. While he found that this did not rise to the level of a civil complaint of illegal conduct by Mayor Shalene and Councilor Harriman, he does say it felt very personal to him. I'd like to know why it was limited to only 6 witnesses, and if any of these 6 witnesses were any of the past city councilors or former staff members who left this year, and how far back this investigation went. I'd like to ask the council, by a majority of members, to vote to authorize the full unredacted report from Toby Timmer released so we can see what's fully in it. It is in your ability to do it under Section 11, action by the councils regarding legal services, that states all opinions obtained from an attorney that are protected by attorney-client privileges are not considered public records, but may be released with the authorization of the majority of you. Please do it so we can see, because there's so much in that report that is redacted, we can't see. There's so much smoke. Is there more fire?
Further public comment?
Matt Roy, Ward 3. Given that we have 1 week left on the posted deadline for applications for the city administrator's position, would it be possible during reports and updates to get the number of actual applicants we've received? And given the pilot program that we've instituted last week, is the deadline going to be updated from 4 p.m. to 5:30 to match Tuesday's working hours for City Hall? Thank you.
Further public comment? Public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk? Yes, I move that we, or I suggest that we move up the LA Balloon Festival wrap-up update, as we have a couple of people here for that. And if there's no strong objection from the council, I suggest we hear the update first from Assistant Director Libby before the first agenda item. Please join us. And if all three of you could please introduce yourselves.
I'm Mel Hamlin.
Hi, I'm Kathy McDonald, Ward 1.
And I'm Nate Libby, Assistant Director of Economic and Community Development, and was one of the lead staff helping to organize the Balloon Fest this year. So we are here to present sort of a wrap-up, debrief report of how the festival went. What I passed around is a thank you card we just got printed yesterday that we'll send to our sponsors and our super volunteers. I do want to recognize 2 super volunteers sitting at this table. So Mel Hamlin has spent many years volunteering with the Great Falls Balloon Festival, took a bit of a hiatus, but came out of an early retirement to join our team and was lead on a number of pieces that made this festival successful. She was the principal sort of supplier of institutional knowledge. This is how we do these things. She supported with all of the work that went into scheduling rides, all of the work that went into scheduling balloons, a lot of the logistical work, a lot of what you saw on the festival grounds, Mel had a hand in. And then her sister, Kathy McDonald, who you all know is the organizer of the Liberty Festival. Basically, she stood up that large festival and then in her spare time worked with us to support Mel and the staff team. And Kathy did a phenomenal job scheduling all of the nonprofit food vendors, training them, supporting them, helping to ensure they had a successful experience, a productive experience. She also supported in scheduling all of the entertainment. The entertainment got rave reviews. I think it was a really impressive lineup. Kathy had a lot to do with that. And so I just want to provide that introduction so that they can give you a bit of their recap of the event, and then I'll go through the memo very briefly. So take it away, Mel.
Please move the mic closer to you.
It can be short.
Okay. So as Nate already said, the festival was a great success this year. We had a lot of great entertainment. The sponsors were wonderful. The food vendors were very happy and did a great job. The craft and trade vendors came out in full force. And obviously the community members came out and really enjoyed everything. So we thank the city for all the support behind the festival to be able to put it on, because it is an iconic event in this area.
So I'll just ditto everything that Mel just told you. But I know when I was first called and asked if I would help with this event, I didn't hesitate at all to jump in. My only hesitation was to make sure I could get Mel on board as well. And so she said she would consult, but she did a lot more than that, that's for sure. So I introduced myself as being a member or being part of Ward 1, but I'm also a very proud member a resident of the city of Lewiston. And running this event, working with Nate and Angie and Brian and John Connor and all of the public works people, the police department, the fire department. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but it was phenomenal, and it made me even prouder to be a resident of Lewiston.
Thank you both. So I'm not going to read the memo that you have in your packet. I'm just going to hit on some of the highlights. I know you have a lot on your agenda this evening. But by way of recap, how we got to operating the Balloon Festival this year was that back in the late spring, the Great Falls Balloon Festival, private nonprofit organization, informed the city they were not able to put on the event this year. From that point, the city made an offer to Great Falls to help them produce a festival. That offer was declined. And then we moved to Plan B, which was presenting to you folks, presenting a plan to operate the festival this year, bringing on Mel and Kathy and a team of folks at City Hall that included administration, marketing and communications, economic development, planning and code, public works, police, as well as the city of Auburn. We pulled together plans in about 11 weeks, and we executed what we think was a pretty successful event. Some numbers to share with you and the public. We had 41 sponsors of this event. A couple of retired mayors, Mayor Mark Kerr from Lewiston and Mayor Jason Levesque from Auburn, served as honorary co-chairs of our fundraising committee. I say honorary, they actually put in an enormous amount of work, making calls, sending out letters, following up, and as a team, which included myself and some others, Chip Morrison as well gave some of his time and effort. We were able to raise about $163,000 to put on this event, which was a little bit shy of our goal of $170,000, but I think pretty close and well within the margin of error, especially given the compressed timeline. We were able to, I think, manage expenses well. We're still doing a final accounting. It looks like we turned a profit, and we're very pleased by that. I'm not able to share a final number with you yet. We're still working through the last few invoices that need to get paid, but we'll share that with you when we have it available. The event was well attended for the most part. The feedback was very positive. I've included a lot of feedback from the general public as well as staff and partners for the festival. You're welcome to peruse that at your leisure. Positive feedback that we received was fairly overwhelming. The entertainers, amusements, the artists and vendors, the food vendors, all highlights of this event. The public and the partners commented on the number, variety, and quality of all of these amenities. I think it helped fill out the event, especially given the weather did not cooperate with us for launches at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. each day. We still received, I think, significant positive feedback for how fun and diverse the offerings were for the daytime events at the festival. Some constructive feedback that we received had to do with some logistics and planning challenges that we had on Friday around handicap accessible parking, which we resolved by Saturday. We did have some challenges with setup on Friday. There was a lot of stuff flying around. John Connor, myself, our super volunteers here, and others really, I think, did a great job figuring a lot of stuff out on the fly, problem solving on the fly, and I think that showed when you went to the event and saw how well it was organized. We also had some challenges on Sunday night at the carnival with some behavior, especially among our younger residents, that required LPD assistance and attention. But overall, it appeared to be a productive and well-attended event. Some numbers to share with you. I sort of went off script here, but 41 sponsors, 14 hot air balloons, 17 nonprofit vendors. Those nonprofit vendors did $135,000 in sales. We heard from several that several nonprofit vendors, they either had their best year or their second best year at this festival, which is a great sign. We had 91 Maine arts and craft vendors who did about $105,000 in sales. We had over 30 entertainers and musicians, and which vendor sold the fried dough?
Rabboni Lodge.
Rabboni Lodge sold over 1,500 fried dough at the Balloon Festival. So the feedback is in the memo. I'm not going to go over all of that. I think I just want to flag a couple for you. Kathy LaBelle at the Station Grill was really happy with how the event operated around her. In the past, it's been a challenge to operate her restaurant while this massive festival is going on around her. She was very pleased with how that all went. We have feedback from staff that's, I think, really helpful. Looking ahead, in terms of next steps, a small group from the planning team will begin discussions with Great Falls about how we can collaborate and support each other next year, and we'll keep you apprised of updates as that comes together. Happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Dave, can you zoom in on this card? Is that possible? No. Oh, wait, that can. Okay, there we go. So this is a great picture of kids having fun at the Balloon Festival, and that's what I saw all weekend long. Assistant Director Livy, Kathy, Mel, we have Director Morris here. John Connor is here. Director Connor is here somewhere. I really appreciate all the city's city help across from the city across the river, Auburn. Thank you so much to everyone. You guys deserve a huge round of applause. I wish that more balloons had gone up, but I still had a fabulous time. Yes, Councilor Soul.
I just have a real quick question, possibly an apology. Are dogs not allowed at the Balloon Festival?
Yeah, you need not apologize, given we.
Because I just waltzed right in with mine.
I think we had maybe 2 or 3 signs positioned at the gates. You know, I think service dogs are absolutely welcome, service animals welcome. The first responders and the PD did report some challenging altercations between dogs that were at the playground, or at the site rather. I think next year we will try to, if we're involved, to the degree we're involved, support better signage at all entrances around those rules.
I don't blame you. Not everyone's a good pet owner either, so. It was great. I loved it.
Councilor Nagy.
Yeah, I just want to say excellent job overall, and the thing about traditions is that if they're not updated, then they sometimes die, and so we've lost some pretty substantial events in the city over a period of time, and it was nice to see the adaptations for the Balloon Festival. And I think it created a lot more vibrancy for people to come and check it out again, you know, because it's been a few years where I would go and sit on the bridges and watch the balloons go up when the weather would cooperate. But, you know, there was an excitement to new things going on that definitely caused a draw. And I just want to make this suggestion possibly. The 6 o'clock launch, I know it's important, but like so many times at 10 a.m. it's nice and you can actually launch the balloons. Just something to think about.
Speak to that.
So it does get a little bit later in the day, and as the air gets warmer, it's tough for the pilots to control the hot air in the balloon with the cold air that they can inject. That's why it's 6 a.m.
That makes sense.
Yep, and 6 p.m. Yep.
Further comments from the council? Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, agenda item number 1.
Yes, item number 1, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Sliders Restaurant, 40 East Avenue. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment for Sliders Restaurant, 40 East Avenue.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Glant, second by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing on an application from Dana's Garage, 193 Crowley Road, for an automobile graveyard junkyard permit. Requested action to grant an automobile graveyard junkyard permit to Dana's Garage, 193 Crowley Road, subject to the condition that no more than 1,000 tires be stored on the property.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Chittum, second by Counselor Glant. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing on an application from the Lewiston Public Works Department, 420 River Road, for an automobile graveyard junkyard permit. Requested action to grant an automobile graveyard junkyard permit to the Lewiston Public Works Department, 420 River Road.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum, second by Counselor Harriman. All right, we're going to have to talk about this, but no. Kevin, I love you. Yes, Counselor Chittum.
Thank you, Director Gagne, for applying for this permit annually. You are exempt under our existing ordinances, and I think it's laudable that you do not want to hide under the cover of a legitimate exemption and go ahead and process this as anyway. It speaks to openness and transparency. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing on an application from Grimmel's Industries, 50 River Road, for an automobile graveyard junkyard permit. Requested action to grant an automobile graveyard junkyard permit to Grimmel's Industries, 50 River Road, subject to the following conditions. 1, the hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 2, maintain screening from the main turnpike.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum,
Second.
second by Counselor Harriman. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 5.
Item number 5, public hearing on an application from Resource Waste Services of Lewiston LLC, 38 Alfred A. Plord Parkway, for an automobile graveyard junkyard permit. Requested action to grant an automobile graveyard junkyard permit to Resource Waste Services of Lewiston LLC, 38 Alfred A. Plord Parkway, subject to the attached conditions.
So moved.
Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Counselor Najin. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, public hearing on an application from Main Heavy Equipment, 1445 Sabata Street, for an automobile graveyard junkyard permit. Requested action to grant an automobile graveyard junkyard permit to Main Heavy Equipment, 1445 Sabata Street.
So moved.
Motion, please. Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Counselor Najin. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 2, definitions for consolidation and reorganization of definitions and addition of definitions for terms used within the ordinance but previously undefined. Requested actions, the proposed amendments to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 2, definitions receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor
Second.
Harriman, second by Counselor Glant. Director Connor, please kick us off.
Thank you very much. We are here for final passage of this. We had the first reading at the last meeting, and as you can see, I brought the planning professional tonight for any further questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Chittum.
I had communicated with you, Director Connor, about a change in plurality, a change in the language of fitness and recreational sports centers. Can we talk about that for a brief second?
Absolutely, Councilor.
The current definition is fitness and recreational sports centers means an establishment. There's faulty parallelism there, and I would suggest that we remove the S off centers and rewrite it to fitness and recreational sports center means establishments. I'm sorry, leave the S and make the establishments plural. It makes better language.
So our discussions, I think pretty sure I emailed you back my response, but our take on it, staff's response is that this was a recommendation from the planning board. Any further changes need to be initiated one of three ways, to the ordinance. Either a recommendation from initiation from the council, a petition of the citizens, at least 10 voting are 18 years old or older, or it can be initiated by the planning board. So staff's recommendation is that if we change it, we believe that it would have to go back to the planning board. This does not meet the de minimis of punctuation or a misspelling in our opinion.
Yes, Councillor Chittum.
If we take that advice, Director Connor, then we are merely rubber stamping anything that the planning board puts before us. And I don't think that's the function of the city council.
Well, you don't have to rubber stamp it. If the council disagrees with this recommendation, you could take it out, and then we could bring it back to the planning board for them to change that language. And then we would start that process and bring it back eventually once they fix it and clean it up.
Yeah, it seems like an awfully gaumy way to fix what really is a very simple, common English language error in the ordinance.
I would tend to agree, but I definitely want to make sure that we're following ordinance.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Planner Norton, but your thoughts on this change?
It makes sense. I think that would be fine to do. We would want to follow that protocol. In addition to removing it tonight, you could also initiate as the council this specific change and send it to the planning board, and then it would be one meeting at the planning board instead of two. So that's an alternative to pulling it out. You would still be pulling it out of your action this evening.
Does this, in your estimation, does this represent a material change, having it one way or the other?
I'm not sure that material change is something that the ordinance really addresses as far as the process for changes. So I would go with the advice from our director.
Sorry, I understand that we would need to go back to the planning board to really make any changes. But does this change affect the language? I realize it cleans it up, but does it?
Yeah, so it probably wouldn't affect how our department defines a use and treats a use. It really is more just a cleanup, like you said.
Councillor Chittum.
I don't want to belabor this point, but I do think at some point we need to thoroughly examine how we as a city put forth our best effort with every activity we do. I think for us to go through the process of going back to the planning board or requesting a citizen-initiated referendum change to the ordinance, that's absurd. And if that's the way we've set up our system, then that needs to be looked at. I'm going to leave this alone now because, frankly, we have bigger and better things to deal with. But for us to be unable to correct very simple grammatical errors in an ordinance without moving heaven and earth to do that is ridiculous.
Councillor Najin.
Unfortunately, I'm going to take a different tack than you. I would suggest that we pulled this portion from, make the suggested changes, because you're right. The language is clunky, and it's can easily be fixed by sending it back to the planning board for them to say, yes, we agree. There's no reason to have the S here, and we can move it over there. And so I agree 100% that we should be putting our best foot forward on all things at all times. That there's no time to get tired at this point on some of this work. And these pieces, like, you know, government is supposed to be clunky and arcane and move slow. So I'm totally fine with sending it back to the planning board with the recommendations that you've made.
Yes, Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the city clerk. I have a question. Yes, sir. Is there a way for us to write an ordinance or something that if there are typos and things that we can fix at this level without having to have it relooked at if it doesn't have any functional change in the meaning? I mean, it would seem that we ought to be able to put something together so that when something comes to us, we can simply say, under this particular ordinance, we can make spelling changes, or we can make grammatical changes, as long as it doesn't affect the meeting?
Sure, I think we can look into that for you, Counselor.
Okay.
Let you know, sure.
Would it, Director Connor and Planner Norton, would it make sense to, pass this as recommended by the, or as passed by the planning board, and then have this change be brought forth on a future agenda item?
We could absolutely do that.
Thoughts on that, councilors? Yes, Councilor Nagy.
I think we could simply approve the entire changes with just the definition of fitness and recreational sports centers being pulled out to be brought back to the planning board, as suggested by City Planner Norton the first go-around. I would be willing to make a motion for that if there was support for it.
Yes, thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Najin. One second, I had a quick question. Madam Clerk, what is the protocol for, because the planning board passed this its entirety, and then we're talking about passing, only part of it or leaving something out. What is your take on that?
Right, so I believe Counselor Najin is recommending that he would make a motion to remove the definition of fitness and recreational sports centers from this item and just adopt the rest of the item in whole, and then send back to the planning board for their review of the definition of that fitness and recreational centers, and then it would come back to council at a future time. Just a reminder, if it comes back to the council at a future time, that would involve first passage, second passage. It would require a legal ad because of the public hearing, so it would take time and money. Just to remind you, just to point that out. Any change to the ordinances like that requires that full process to be followed.
Okay, thank you. Administrator O'Malley, did you have something to add?
I was going to add what she just told you about the legal ad and have to have 2 more readings on it I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that.
I appreciate you both. Councilor Najin.
Just to follow up with that, this question's for the clerk. What would be the simplest process right now? Without accepting the definition as with the S in the wrong place?
Certainly, council's welcome to do whatever they'd like to do to proceed. If you don't feel that it's really a change that's going to impact the application of the ordinance, impact the applications from any fitness centers and whatnot, you could leave it in, and it could just be added to a list of future housekeeping changes that, as the planning board and the planning staff, I'm sure, as they just come along, different things, they're going to find different housekeeping changes over time. They could make a list, and every 3 months or whenever, bring it forth for you as just sort of a cleanup. And we could certainly take that approach as well, adopt it as presented, knowing it will come back eventually with some others.
I appreciate that. In essence, you're saying we just put a pin in this, add it to the list. I'm sure we'll find something else later. Planner Norton. Did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that right now on our land use list of uses, the fitness and recreational sports centers is listed, and we didn't have a definition for it. So we will probably want to correct that, that spelling on the chart as well. So we would want to do that maybe at the same time that we correct this.
We appreciate your effort to find more issues. Councillor Najin, yes.
I just wanted to see if there was any further discussion that Councillor Chittum wanted to put forward. Are you happy with it? Like, what would you like to see?
No,
Councillor
no,
Chittum,
I'm
yes.
not, excuse me, thank you, I'm not happy, but I don't want to waste any more of our time on what really is not a substantive issue. It just makes us look silly in the city of Lewiston, and that is abhorrent to me.
At this point, thank you, Councillor Chittum, and at this point, I recommend that we accept our clerk's recommendation to put this on a list, and we will fix this at a time in the future. Okay. Any other questions before we send this to public comment at this time? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Anything further from you two? Director Connor, you're okay?
I'm okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
No.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6 to 1.
I trust that one of you is keeping this new list going. Okay, thank you. Item number 8.
Item number 8, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 5, Administration and Enforcement to clarify language and streamline processes. Requested action that the proposed amendments to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 5, Administration and Enforcement receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Chittum, second by Councillor Gallant. Director Connor.
Again, second passage. I think this one we cleared up what was requested last time. At the last council meeting, sorry.
Comments and questions from councilors? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Item number 9.
Item number 9, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 9, Appeals and Variances for Changes to Public Notice. That the requested action, that the proposed amendments to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 9, Appeals and Variances receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councillor Chittum, second by Councillor Harriman. Director Connor.
We received no further questions on this one, so this one is should be good to go from the last council meeting as well.
Councillor Najin.
Have you received any feedback at all from the general public? Has anybody concerning the mailed versus the emailed?
We have not heard anything.
Councillor Chittum.
For my own purposes, I'd like to go back and visit this and/or. Is my reading of the way that this particular definition is worded correct? This means that a blank wall cannot have more than 225 square feet of wall space.
Wrong item. Wrong item.
I think that's
That's
a
the-
different article, right? We're in Article 9 right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got so excited, I jumped ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Further questions from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Item number 10.
Item number 10, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 11, District Regulations regarding changes to the land use table, space and bulk table, including changes to lot sizes, density, and setbacks, and to the design district overlay. Requested action that the proposed amendment to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 11, District Regulations, receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Was that you, Counselor Sol? Yeah. Seconded by Counselor Sol. Director Connor.
Again, I don't believe we got any questions on this one. This was, we took out what you guys had asked the last time, and we're going to bring that forward again with more housekeeping later on, but this is for the second passage as well.
Questions and comments from the council? Counselor Chittum.
Yes, I'm back on this blank wall and the "and" conjunction. I want to be clear that I understand what is being prohibited or, prohibited, because it shall not contain. Can you, Director Connor or Planner Norton, put that language in your own words as to what that proscribes in buildings?
Absolutely, and I'm going to turn it over to Planner Norton for that.
Yes, so the intent is that it would be the 15 feet wide and 15 feet high, and then it would need to be those dimensions in that amount or in excess that would constitute a blank wall. When we were defining blank wall a few years back, there was discussion about those dimensions, and I think it could be something different. But of course, we have to pick somewhere to start. And the intent was that we didn't have a blank wall be something that, you know, is maybe 4 or 5 feet wide and 15 or 20 feet tall. Otherwise, you know, you'd have to stagger all your windows, or you'd have to do interesting things on the side of the architecture. So that was really the intent, was that we didn't want large expanses of a blank wall. We want to allow some flexibility for, you know, elevator shafts, other parts of a building that maybe people don't want windows, or don't want to do different material changes, or the other things that constitute not being a blank wall in our definition. Does that help?
Well, I'm going to leave this alone, but I want to posit, I've proposed a building on Lisbon Street in which the primary facade has a blank wall that's 14 feet tall and 27 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
Is that allowed under this definition?
I would say that it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to come back to this later, but not tonight.
Okay.
I'll work with the necessary staff and people to accurately portray, because I don't think it's the intent to allow a 14-foot high, 30-foot long wall. I don't think that's the intent. And if you agree that's not the intent, then this language needs to be changed. But in the interest of moving things along, Mr. Mayor, I'll live with it for tonight, but I'm not letting it go.
Sounds good.
Duly noted, Counselor. Thank you. If I may, Council, Administrator O'Malley, I see that we have a number of capable engineers from Public Works here. Could we get one of them to check the thermostat? It's feeling a little warm.
You're a little warm.
Yes.
Kevin, Jeff, you're up.
They're all looking at each other. But, okay, further questions from the council on this agenda item? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Director Connor, Planner Norton, we're feeling good.
Good.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
No.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed a vote of 1 to 6. I'm sorry, 6 to 1, sorry. Motion passed a vote of 6 to 1, sorry.
No apology, we're good. Item number 11.
11, item number 11, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 12, performance standards regarding changes to parking and to clarify measurements for buffers in the marijuana standards. Requested action that the proposed amendment to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 12, performance standards, receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Councilor Harriman. Director Connor.
This one, I don't believe had any questions on the first reading, and no questions for follow-up for tonight's either.
Does the council have questions or comments now? Councilor Harriman?
Just because I'm curious, so when it says on the marijuana business buffers, the property line of the school or child care facility to any portion of the marijuana business, does that mean, so it's the property line of the school to the building that it's located in and not the property line of the marijuana business?
Correct. So when you think about a lot of the strip plazas that have large portions of land and a school may be in the far corner of it, we've made this so that the measurement starts with where that school actually, leases space, rents space, whatever's closest to the marijuana establishment, whether it be that common wall or an outside fence around a playground.
Okay, thank you very much.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 6? I'm sorry, Ward 2?
Yes?
Ward 3?
Yes.
Word 4?
Yes.
Word 5?
Yes.
Word 6?
Yes.
Word 7?
Yes.
Word 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 12.
Item number 12, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 13, Development Review and Standards regarding changes to landscaping maintenance, amenity space, and changes for clarity. Requested action that the proposed amendment to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 13, Development Review and Standards, receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Councilor Gallant. Director Connor.
I believe we had some questions on this one at the last meeting regarding the shrubbery, and I had no further follow-up questions leading up to tonight. If there's any others, we'll entertain them.
Questions, comments from the council? Councilor Nagy.
Just to make the statement, because I believe it's true, and I just want to make sure I'm correct. In the development review, if somebody is looking for a variance on any of these portions, they can ask for that during the planning board session, correct? We've given them in the past, as I recall.
Yeah, there's two different, so in the design standards, those requirements have a variance set of criteria that the planning board reviews. More generally, for the review criteria A through W that you're familiar with for all development review projects, there is a provision that allows the director of the department, and then at their suggestion, for the board to omit a certain submittal or other requirement based on what seems like a reasonable hardship for the project. So there are a couple mechanisms for that. This is really where it comes to like the plant material. I don't know if that's the one you're looking at. This is really intended so that kind of after the project is approved and installed to ensure that the owner would water the plant material, care for it, replace it 5 years later if it dies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, completely understood. It's just in the cases of I can see situations in which somebody would ask for a variance for that, and I know that, like, for instance, when one of the projects off of River Road with a tree requirement, we had waived that because the portion of the property was actually being like reclaimed naturally, and so yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if the board waived a tree planting requirement, then this wouldn't apply because the tree wouldn't exist. But where plant materials are on the approved plan and are required, then we would want to see those to be kept and maintained.
Thank you very much.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 13.
Item number 13, public hearing and first passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 15, significant buildings and districts to definitions, the review of color and paint changes, and review of signs. Requested action that the proposed amendments to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 15, significant buildings and districts, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and the public hearing on said ordinance be continued to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Councilor Gallant. Director Connor.
This will be the first time that we're hearing this tonight, and I would like to turn it over to Planner Norton to better explain the changes.
Okay, so the Historic Preservation Review Board is the board that primarily works with this article, as well as staff in the planning department. And some of these changes, most of them were initiated by the Historic Preservation Review Board, are things that they had talked about for some period of time. Most recently, though, staff also made some changes to the definition of historical significance. The board had looked at that definition. The way it's written right now, it's very lengthy. And so there was a thought that simplifying it would be helpful. So we've made a suggestion there for language. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to go through what you have specific questions on.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, we did receive Councilor Chittum's questions, and we appreciated that, getting it in time to bring to the planning board and bring those questions to them. And that was in my response to you as well on what their recommendations were for your answer.
Councilor Chittum.
Yeah, just so that everyone understands, the process is that the Historic Preservation Review Board works with this ordinance, had some suggested changes to make it more workable, more user-friendly. That then goes to the planning board for the planning board's review. So there's a two-step process here. The planning board has weighed in on this and now has sent its recommendations to the city council. So that's the process. And my question to Director Connor earlier was about changing some language in the definition of historical significance. But my understanding from an earlier item on this agenda is that that can't happen without having the planning board, again, weigh in on those changes. So here again, we're in the position of either not accepting these changes at all or rubber stamping them. And again, I iterate that I don't believe that's this council's function. So we really need to look at mechanisms that will allow us to do necessary tweaking. So, thank you.
Further comments or questions from the council? And the planning board passed this unanimously?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, yep, 7-0.
Thank you. Public comment for this agenda item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Christine Holden, Ward 1, a professional proofreader, known to some of you in that capacity. I should say, as Councilor Chittum has reported before, I would share some of his concerns. They may be not exactly the same ones. And in Article 15 on significant buildings and districts, I had much appreciation for the fact that the planning staff had shown the proposed definition without markups. Much, much easier to read. I'd recommend anybody ever doing it to give them the two versions, the one that's stricken, added, and then the clean one. But I did have some concerns with the proposed definition. I relayed them in a message to Planner Norton, who was out of the office, and then also spoke with Director Connor, who assured me the information, or gave me the information that he gave you earlier today. I am sorry that this cannot be dealt with in a simple, easy manner, but I do understand, as Director Connor had said, that there's an opportunity for some kind of comprehensive review, and I would be very happy to volunteer to be involved in that. I'd be even happier if you thought it was worth more than a volunteer salary. But I seriously, though, I do think it's incredibly important that the face that the city presents to our residents, citizens and otherwise, English speakers and otherwise, should reflect correct, grammatical, and graceful language. I hope I've done that tonight. Thank you.
Further public comment? Back to the council? Director Connor, planner, or 1 second. Yes, Councilor Nagy.
So, from what I understand, we're not granting any further powers to the Historical Review Board from the city's perspective. That it seems like there's like definition changes here that in the past. I just want to clarify. If I want to paint my building, do I need to check with the Historical Review Board? If I want to put up a new sign or replace an old sign, do I have to check? And it used to be that it was historical structures, right, which were marked, and then supporting structures, which means that they were in vicinity and connected, right? And so the question is, does this still fall under that, or for instance, if I'm going to build a new building in a historical designated area, right? Like, for instance, canals. Do I then need historical review in my development planning? I guess that's the question.
Sure. Okay. So I'll start with the last question. A new building. This doesn't make any changes. The ordinance as it reads today does require, if it's in a historic district, that a new building would get a certificate of appropriateness so that the board can consider if it is in character with the neighborhood. So this ordinance change doesn't affect that at all. What it does do is it expands a little bit the review of signs. So right now, well, the way this is written with the changes, a sign going on a historic structure or a sign going in a designated historic district would need a certificate of appropriateness. So it wouldn't matter if it was a historic building or not, but everything in the district would require sign review, so you'd have consistency of signs. It also, there was a change a few years ago that provided for staff approval of signs instead of it needing to go to the full board. And this explains a little further the circumstances under which staff can do it versus when it goes to the board, because we found the language we adopted was a little unclear. So there is an expansion in that signs in a designated historic district would now also need certificate of appropriateness approval, which is typically done by staff, but in some circumstances it goes to the board. What was your first question?
It was basically about the
paint.
the historical and also paint. Yes.
It was about paint. Okay. Give me just a moment to look at that exact language.
And the reason that I'm bringing up all of this, ultimately, when we're referring to the neighborhood, some of the historical neighborhoods, for instance, there's actually a lack of any type of economic activity whatsoever. And so holding on to the historical structural value or coloration of a building in order to, or determining what can be developed in certain ways, I would rather see. I'll give you an example. I was involved in putting the mural up, the Blue Jay mural, on what was the interior wall of a supporting historical structure. And it was quite a process in order to get it up. The review from the Historical Review Board was long and arduous, and there was a lot of pushback on getting that mural up. And we've got a successful coffee shop now named Blue Jay Coffee, which the argument against putting the mural up was that murals that would be considered signs, right, would be that we would somehow, create large signage. But the thing is, we have a successful business in a building that was deteriorating, and now there's this another business that's opening up in it. And I guess the point is, like, I would like to see less restriction within any of the historical areas, not more. And I understand that some of this is difficult because some of this actually lies on state statute and the way that we define the historical areas. But I would not want to give up any power that we have at the moment, and that's just what I want to name.
Sure.
Planner Norton, I just had a quick question. So, in a reference to the Blue Jay Coffee building, so there are buildings that are on the historic registry, right? But then there's buildings with registered facades. Is that correct? Or am
I'm
I
not sure
saying?
about facades differently.
Or
We
registered
have-
buildings?
We have buildings that have, that are considered historic, and then those that have significance to the district. So there's kind of two designations. The way our ordinance is outlined, we have lists of buildings, and so they fall into different categories. We also have buildings that only are under the provision if they're going to be demolished, and so that the demolition delay provision comes into effect. So we actually have kind of, there's different treatments to different buildings. If I can speak briefly to murals, at the time that the Blue Jay came forward, we did not have a definition of mural. So there was work after the fact because staff recognized, that it was a very challenging process. And we worked with the Historic Preservation Review Board and the Planning Board to come up with a definition for mural that limited the amount of advertising, if you will, text on it. And so it seems to be working. It seems like it's been going pretty well since then as far as murals have gone in the city. As far as paint, I will say that this change keeps in it that if you're changing color of paint, there's no certificate of certificate of appropriateness required from the board. But if you are painting, brick that's not painted, and it's a historic building, that would need to be considered, because that would be considered an exterior change. But if you're changing color, even if you're painting, if it was white paint right now and you're going to paint it magenta, that doesn't go to the Historic Preservation Review Board under this language. They are at, their recommendation was if it becomes a problem because a rebuilding is magenta, then we'll address it then. But they didn't want to get in the business of looking at paint color. So.
Further comments from the council? Madam Clerk, have we been to public comment for this item?
We have, yes.
I'm sorry?
We have, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything further?
No, sir.
From me.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
No, and I'll add that I think that it's going to cause significant problems for new businesses.
Motion passed by a vote of 6 to 1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I was speaking with Director Connor beforehand. Do we want to, what property do we want to take first?
Could we take a quick break, Mr. Mayor?
We're going to take a quick recess, and we'll be back. Thank you. Hello, and welcome back. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your patience. This evening, we will conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 3 Lincoln Circle is a nuisance or dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable Maine statute at Section 2851 of Title 17 of the Maine Revised Statutes, whether the structure poses a serious threat to public health and safety within the meaning of Section 2856 of that title, and if so, whether the threat to public health and safety requires prompt action. If the council determines the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building, it will then determine what disposal must be made of that building. The building is owned by Conlon Carabine. I ask that any owner or party of interest to introduce yourself, including your name, address, and position. Is an owner or representative present?
Yeah.
Does any city council member know the owner or have any knowledge about this matter? That means you could not fairly and impartially hear the facts and decide the matter based on the evidence presented at this hearing.
No.
Before proceeding, I call on Director Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening, the owner did show up, and the department and the owner have come to an agreement, and so that we would ask the council and the mayor to continue this hearing indefinite to a date to be determined.
Thank you, Director Connor. Madam Clerk, what is the motion for that?
So just get some clarification. So to postpone indefinitely means to kill the item, but I believe the director said to postpone it to a future date. Is that correct?
Yes, to continue the item.
Right, so we would just be continuing the item. Would it be continued to the next council meeting or to a date to be determined?
A date to be determined.
Okay, so then the motion would be to postpone this item to a future city council meeting.
Do I have a motion for that? Yes, Councilor Chittum.
Mr. Mayor, I move to continue this hearing until a date to be determined.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Chittum and second by Councilor Gallant. Discussion? Madam Clerk, do we need to go to public comment for this?
Not
Oh,
necessarily.
yeah, we're hearing. I was just, yes, reminded by our council, general counsel. Thanks, guys. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Sol, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if this building was secured. Like, can people still get in and out of this building?
It was not previously, but the owner just came in from Indiana, I believe, Illinois, and it is secure now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Director Connor. We are now up to item number 15.
Item 15, condemnation hearing for the building located at 163 Summer Street. Requested action to conduct a hearing to determine if the building located at 163 Summer Street has met the dangerous building statutes as defined in Title 17, Section 2851 et al.
This evening, we will conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 163 Summer Street is a nuisance or dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable Maine statute at Section 2851 of Title 17 of the Maine Revised Statutes, whether the structure poses a serious threat to public health and safety within the meaning of Section 2856 of that title, and if so, whether the threat to public health and safety requires prompt action. If the council determines that the structure is a nuisance or a dangerous building, it will then determine what disposal must be made of that building. The building is owned by the Larry W. Mays and Gladys E. Jones, also known as Gladys E. Mays. I ask that any owner introduce yourself, including your name, address, and position. Is an owner or representative present? Does any city council member know the owner or have knowledge about this matter? That means you could not fairly or impartially hear the facts and decide the matter based on the evidence presented at this hearing.
No.
No.
This hearing will be conducted according to the mayor's procedures for a dangerous building hearing, which I read at the September 3rd, 2024 council meeting and are included in your packets. I accept into evidence the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's Exhibits A through G. I now ask that the Lewiston Planning and Code Enforcement Department present the City Council with information relevant to this matter before it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add for the record that Exhibit G will be passed out in just a few moments. My name is John Connor. I'm the Director of Planning and Code Enforcement for the City of Lewiston. On September 10th, 2024, a notice of this hearing was recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit A. The building at 163 Summer Street, which I will refer to as the structure, is a single-family residential property. 163 Summer Street is identified as Lot 015 on the City of Lewiston Tax Map 205. Property information is included in your packets as Exhibit B. 163 Summer Street is owned by Larry W. Mays and Gladys E. Mays by virtue of a warranty deed, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit C. Miss Mays is also known as Gladys Jones. There are no mortgages or other encumbrances on the structure. On August 23, 2024, Larry Mays accepted service of this notice of hearing. The acceptance of service is in your packets as Exhibit D. On September 6, 2024, Gladys Jones accepted service of this notice of hearing. The acceptance of service is in your packet as Exhibit E. Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Joseph Trammell will describe the conditions at the property.
I am City of Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Joe Trammell.
Please move the mic closer to you. Thank you.
I have almost 3 years' experience as a building official, initially as a fire inspector, most recently as Maine Certified Code Enforcement Officer. Next, in the following slideshow, which is included in your packets as Exhibit F, I will describe the conditions at 163 Summer Street that cause the structure to be dangerous or a nuisance. 163 Summer Street meets 3 major criteria for a dangerous building. It is structurally unsafe, a hazard to health and safety, and it is dangerous to life or property. Our requested action is to order the building to be demolished and the site cleared and stabilized. Currently, the building is unsecure and easily accessible. The water service was disconnected in October of '23. Frozen water pipes caused a large amount of flooding within the structure. The property has structural damage and prolonged inadequate maintenance, leading to unsafe conditions. These are just some exterior shots of the property showing windows that are missing, a porch that's collapsing in, and then interior damage showing the egress stairway leading from the second floor to the first floor, and the main support beam on that is completely collapsed. Fire hazard and danger to life and property. The electrical system has been compromised by a severe water leak and constitutes a fire hazard. The building still maintains electricity running to the breaker panel. Power is currently still active within the structure. This also creates a fire hazard for the entire building. The water leak has damaged ceilings and walls, degrading the fire separation barrier, which will allow a fire to spread quickly. These are just some images to show the ceiling, or what was the ceiling, separating the first floor from the second floor. Unsanitary conditions, which are a hazard to health and safety. Rubbish and hazardous materials, such as animal feces throughout the property, could cause harm to others getting into the property. And there's currently a lack of water for hygiene and waste removal. There's apparent mold and rodent waste found in the building, and several hazardous interior conditions. In conclusion, 163 Summer Street is structurally unsafe, it is a fire hazard, and it is a hazard to the health and safety. At this point, no owner or party in interest has demonstrated the ability to rehab or maintain the premises in a manner contrary to the long period of inadequate maintenance. Our requested action conclude that the threat to the public health and safety requires prompt action to secure the building. Order to the owner to immediately secure the building. Within 30 days, the owner needs to demolish the building as well as clear and stabilize the site. We request that City Council issue the proposed order included in your packet.
I'm going to ask Code Enforcement Officer Tamel to hand out Exhibit G to you. This morning, Mr. Larry Mays provided a written statement via email to myself and Code Enforcement Officer Tamel, which I'm circulating to each of you as Exhibit G. This exhibit also has been entered into the public record and updated in the agenda. And I would just like to say to the council that Mr. Mays came forward later in the process, once being served. Once he did get notification of this hearing, Mr. Mays was very helpful. He was very cooperative with Code Enforcement Officer Trammell, allowing us to go into the building to get those photos. So I just wanted to make that known for the record that he was helpful. And as you can see in his statement, he does recognize that the building is dangerous and that he lacks the ability at this time to bring it into compliance.
Anything further?
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And now the council has an opportunity to ask clarifying questions from our Planning and Code Department. Yes, Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you summarize this so I don't have to read 5 pages?
Mr. Mays is a distinguished veteran who has suffered some ailments, some medical issues, and this home is his home for a long time. He's just had some ailments and an inability to upkeep the general maintenance of the property as it should have been, and cause it to go into disrepair.
Did he have a plan?
He has not had a plan for us.
Thank
no.
you.
Yes, Councilor Longchamps.
Is anyone living there right now?
No. So in his statement, you'll see that he makes mention of 6 years from an initial notice of violation that the Code Enforcement Office had with him. It's been the practice of the department not to bring dangerous buildings to the council for residential buildings with people living in them. He was living in the building at that time. When it came to our attention that he was no longer living and nobody was living in the building, that's when we decided to make the prompt action to take it as a dangerous building.
And then I just see here, it just says that.
If you can move your mic closer to.
This is just one thing that I picked out here. While it says, while I try to explore other options. So.
If he was exploring other options, it was not conveyed to the department.
Okay.
This is the first that we've seen of that.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Councilor Najin.
I can speak a little to this. This is actually 3 houses down from my house. The property, I believe, was most probably should have been condemned about 12 years ago. That's when the windows first deteriorated and the birds started moving, like there was pigeons that were living in the house. But ultimately, it was owner occupied. The gentleman that was living in the place, I know that several veterans organizations had reached out to him. They still do maintenance on the yard because the yard gets overgrown quite considerably. But I can tell you just from the visual, I don't see how this building is savable in any way, shape, or form. When you look at it from the street, the back end of the building is literally falling off. It's open, so like you can fly like basically a small plane through it. It's living in those conditions can't be good for anyone. And I'm glad that he is no longer living in the residence, but the issue is that there's now a major, it's a building that can't be saved. I can tell you that. If you drive by and just take a look at it, you'd know immediately.
If I can remind the council, the time for deliberation will come very soon. Right now, we're asking questions of our Planning and Code Department. Any further questions? Anything further that you two would like to say?
Anything? No, sir. I believe Councilor Najin, spoke very eloquently to, what we've seen out there. We've never wanted to condemn a building that was, occupied by a resident, but this one is clearly beyond repair in our opinion, and definitely needs to be brought down and site secured.
Thank you. Mr. Carey, are we ready to close the record?
Yes, Mayor, I believe so.
The record is now closed, and now, yes, deliberations from the council. Councilor Najin.
I was just going to ask, actually, a question, so I don't know if that, can I ask a question after you've closed the record?
We're now going to reopen.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, and yes, please proceed with your question.
So my question is this. I know that he is no longer in the residence. The process would be that you put a condemnation order in. They have 30 days to come forward with a plan to do something. If it's required that the building is demolished, I guess the question is if the owner doesn't have the financial capacity to do so or the ability to organize it, can you just explain that process so we all understand it?
Sure. So if the owner can't, have the financial capacity to do it, and after the time period has been met since the service, letting him know, then the city will step in and hire contractors to come out and do that. Once the city does that and pays that fee, that will then be invoiced back to the property owner. The property owner has a certain period of time to pay that invoice. Should that invoice not be able to be paid by the property owner, then the city will levy a special tax on the property.
Thank you.
Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. Which leads me to ask, are we able to or allowed as a city to explain to the individual that maybe if he turns it over to a realtor with such need for homes in the area, maybe he can get away from all this and the city won't get stuck with having to pay for it and then to wait years to do something with a lot that's potential? Are we allowed to do that? Can we negotiate with the person and say, you only have 30 days, but I might recommend you do this? It sounds like the person needs guidance.
Mr. Carey, would you like to speak to that?
The city should not do that. And if the person has questions, they have that time in the order. They have that period of time. But there should be a difference. The city is taking on a significant amount of authority here under the statute, and so should have an arm's length from that.
Further questions for our Planning and Code Department? The record is now closed, and yes, deliberations from the council. Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have briefly scanned the Exhibit G. The sense I get from it is that the owner of the property has fallen on hard times, is perhaps disabled, and regrets that the situation has arrived at this point. In my opinion, that's all immaterial. What we are being asked to do tonight is evaluate the hazardous nature of the building itself. While the owner's story may be sad, I don't believe it allows us or should sway us at all in our determination of finding the facts of that building and whether or not it is a dangerous and hazardous structure.
Yes, it's clear from the pictures and the report, this building should come down. Any further comments? Counselor Chittum.
I guess I've forgotten since the last time we did this. Is it up to us now to move to find in favor of the order, or to adopt the order presented in the packet?
Yes, momentarily. There are no other questions or comments from councilors. Madam Clerk.
Sure, so the motion before you is with regard to the property at 163 Summer Street to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order of demolition proposed by the City Planning and Code Enforcement Department, which order established the corrective action to be taken by the property owner and the time frame for taking such action, in which authorized the city administrator to take such corrective action if the property owner fails to do so, and to recoup the city's costs through a special tax or collective action.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum, second by Counselor Nagy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you to you too, Travis. Item number 16, Madam Clerk.
Yes, item number 16, resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate.
One second, Madam Clerk. Are we, councilors, what would you like to do?
We're talking about moving back to our seats.
I understand. Is that what we're doing?
We're staying.
Okay.
We're staying. We moving? I don't
I
really.
guess we're staying.
Madam Clerk, I believe we have arranged things sufficiently for the rest of this meeting. Please continue.
Okay, item number 16, resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate choice supplemental grant funding to assist with the construction of the 104 apartment DeWitt housing development. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate choice supplemental grant funding to assist with construction of the 104 apartment DeWitt housing development.
May I have a motion,
So
please?
moved.
Counselor Chittum. Second by Counselor Gallant. Director Jeffers, please kick us off.
Certainly. This is a grant that the city has already received. It was a competitive process. The Choice program recognized that with COVID, costs of construction increased dramatically, and that the funding that was available to build projects that were approved across the country was inadequate, so they put out another round of funding, and Avesta and Lewiston Housing Authority, along with the city as a partner in this grant, had applied for the supplemental funding. And the first one is for the DeWitt Housing Project. I have been informed that I misspelled DeWitt. It is supposed to have a capital W, not a single or a lowercase. So we can change that, but I got an education. I guess I got to travel over the pond. I would have known it was a Dutch name. But at any rate, this is $2.5 million supplemental funding that we're asking you to say, yes, we appreciate that it's applied for, granted, and we can expend it as the project gets built.
Thank you, Director. Questions, comments from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 17.
Item number 17, resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate choice supplemental grant funding to assist with construction of the Wedgewood Housing Project. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate choice supplemental grant funding to assist with the construction of the Wedgewood Housing Project.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum, second by Counselor Harriman? Yes, okay. Director Jeffers.
Same circumstances. This is the project that is currently under construction. This is the Wedgewood project, 82 units. We applied for funding. We're awarded $1,795,000.45. So simply asking you to approve and appropriate that grant.
Questions, comments from the Counselor Chittum?
This project is already under construction. It was fully funded. All of the financing was worked out, and now we apparently have a $1.8 million addition to the budget. Can you explain how this is going to impact or what shortfall it's going to cover?
This was actually part of completing the financing for it, and it was the rush to it. This should have been appropriated when it was first received. I've only recently learned that anytime we get grant funding, we were sort of in the back seat on this one, but this was part of the funding that's already been approved for the project. The DeWitt is still in process. That financing, we're waiting for Maine Housing to provide a notice to proceed, which is what the next steps are on securing the low-income housing tax credits, lining up the whole capital stack. So the first one, the $2.5 million, is more critical. I mean, they're both needed, but this is not additional funding. We've all of a sudden got $1.8 million new money. This is already accounted for in the budget.
So just so I can repeat that I understood, this $1.8 million was factored into the project budget from the get-go.
Not from the get-go, but as they were having a shortfall in funding, the request was, we need more money. The Choice program nationally said, we're going to launch a supplemental funding program. It was a competitive process. They applied, were awarded it, and that's what it took to complete the financing.
All right, thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Item number 18.
Item number 18, order authorizing the acceptance of utility easements across a portion of 22 and 24 Buttonwood Lane for the purpose of installing and maintaining a storm drain. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the acceptance of utility easements across a portion of 22 and 24 Buttonwood Lane for the purpose of installing and maintaining a storm drain.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Councilor Harriman. Director Gagne, Engineer Boley, please kick us off.
Good evening. This project came to our attention while we were doing work on Buttonwood. The two residents brought the attention that they had issues with drainage to staff, and I will let Engineer Boley go from there.
Sure. So there's an existing drain behind Mr. Damon's house. He brought it to our attention. Wasn't sure if the city already owned it, if we had an easement, who's responsible for it. It was there 40 years ago when he bought the house. We weren't aware of it. It wasn't on our maps. So we went in and did some dye testing and determined that it was connected to our sewer, which is upstream of a combined sewer system in that area, our most active CSO in the city. So I met with the two property owners out there, tried to come up with a solution that would benefit the flooding they're seeing in their backyard, because the pipe is undersized for the 5 acres that drains to it. So heavy rains last year, they had significant water in their backyards. So we came up with this proposal where the city would install a larger pipe connected to our separated drain. So it removes a lot of water from the sewer system and resolves their backyard flooding, which a lot of the water comes from other properties onto their property, all the way up to Main Street. So it's about a 5 acre area that drains to that one spot. That's a summary of.
So in looking at the project, we brought it forward because we believe this is for public betterment. This takes care of a combined sewer inflow issue, which is a compliance issue for us that's been going on. We've been working on those resolutions for over 30 years. So as we find these, if it's strictly private, we work with the private owners to upgrade their pipes, tie in. Where this one is not just involving two private, but it's a much larger area draining into this off from these two parcels. We brought it for you tonight for discussion and consideration.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. Just to be clear, the only action that we're being asked to consider tonight is to accept an easement to do this project.
Correct.
Has the project been, is it part of the operating budget? Is it funded? Is it anticipated to happen this year?
We have capital outlay, capital funds to do the storm drain and water line. And so that's the different funding that goes into some of those street projects that we're doing, and that's what's going on this street. So there's existing funding that can cover this work, but what we need is the legal ability to do it.
And that's not an issue tonight. The only issue is, do we accept the easement from these two property owners?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Najin.
I just have a couple of questions about, first and foremost, when was Buttonwood last paved? You know?
I'm not
Quite a
sure.
while ago?
We're repaving it right this fall.
You're repaving it right now, okay.
This fall, right. We're replacing the water main and repaving, well, we're paving half the road. We didn't have the full budget to pave the
Okay,
whole
so,
road right
yeah.
now. Yeah.
And I take it that's a crowned road. Does it have like drainage on street level as well? Like sewer drains on the street?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm just curious about that because I see how sometimes when we put in the roads, when we engineer the roads, I think about Spring Street's one of those roads that's crowned and doesn't have curbing on one side, so basically it causes flooding on one side of the road. The property that I have on Riverside, all the water runs into it from Main Street down Riverside Street. Just thinking about the ways that you control water when you're paving too, that's a big piece of it. Just want to point that out.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Item number 19.
Item number 19, resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate grant funding for the fiscal year 2024 Community Project Funding Grant for Samard Payne Park Implementation and Beach Street Economic Development Infrastructure Project in the amount totaling $5,005,005. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate grant funding for the fiscal year 2024 Community Project Funding Grant for Samard Payne Park Implementation and Beach Street Economic Development Infrastructure Project in the amount totaling $5,005,000.
So
I have a
moved.
motion, please. Councillor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Councillor Gallant. Administrator O'Malley, who's kicking us off, or do we need to be kicked off? Oh, yes, Director Gagne, please.
Good evening. So I want to say that this started out as a collaborative effort going after some funding, and it was a great job to be able to get the application in, as well as get congressional support to get this funding. This is some of the vision when we talk about the River Island Master Plan and that whole downtown area and tying things together. So previous administration as well as staff, but multiple departments helped put this application together and then receive this money. So I'll let City Engineer Jeff Boley talk about what this money is going to do and how we're looking to use it.
Sure. So the projects were mainly based on what was in the Riverfront Island Master Plan. There's a map for each included in the packet. The larger one, the $3.9 million, is on the first map, which is, like I said, pulled straight from the master plan, including the Oxford Street streetscape and overlook, a pavilion, and the pedestrian bridge, and the canal steps and landscaping. However, originally the request was for 4.5 million, and we were only awarded 3.9, so we were looking to cut the pedestrian bridge from the project, where we already have a pedestrian bridge on one end. Having one at the end of Cross Street would be nice, but it's not necessarily a priority. The other one, and that was a Senator Collins that put that one forward. The other one was through Mr. Golden, Representative Golden, for the $1,105,000 on the second map. Which was for, mainly for Beach Street work, to rehab Beach Street, from the bridge to just before the pedestrian bridge, add a turnaround at the end. Includes widening the street to add parking all the way down to support the museum, and future development of 35 Beach Street, and whatever happens at the what's called the pump house or the powerhouse behind. It also includes the pathway across the museum property along the river, and utilities and drainage improvements, water line extension down Beach Street to support the other development of those properties, and drainage of the street. So it would extend the street. Right now, the street ends at the entrance to the museum. This would extend the street all the way to the end with a proper turnaround. So that's about it.
Thank you both. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So I have a question about the first one, the first map. So those items there, those aren't, they're not in their final design stage or anything, right? This is just, it's like.
No, this was a very conceptual estimate that was put together. We have not begun any detailed design yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Najin.
So, well done. Congratulations on acquiring these funds. I've just got a couple of technical questions. So when we were putting in the redundant water line, from my understanding, that was when the pedestrian walkway under the bridge was supposed to go in, and I'm just wondering why that didn't happen then, and what the cost analysis is now when we've already put in the redundant water line versus, and it doesn't matter because we need it, right? We need it in order to access that park and make that area safer. The number of pedestrian accidents there is horrible. That giant slip lane is no good at all. But I'm curious as to why that walkway wasn't put in when the redundant water line was put in, because I thought that was the plan. And also, do we have the easements or the permission to actually make that walkway work right now?
So I'll take a stab at it and let Jeff correct some details needed. There was some creative work done to try to get the walkway underneath there as part of the redundant water line. We were going to use it as an inspection port. We were going to use it as an access. We started looking at to build it and realized that what we needed to do to secure the permitting was going to hold up the water line project. So we still have some needs to be able to get under there and inspect it, but it went from a very simple walkway similar to what Auburn has, and you all have heard me say this before, we've never been more regulated, and the regulations keep getting more restrictive. There's more hoops to jump through. Funding is going less. So we cannot build what Auburn had built in the past. There's issues with restriction of flow under storm events. So the December storm, which the river rose and washed out at Veterans Park, that walkway in that area would be taking away capacity of the river to drain and go underneath that bridge. So that was some of the concerns. So we've been through some different alternative and conceptual designs. We actually went after some funding. At the time, the funding was going to tie things back in, and I don't think it was at the best for the city to accept that funding. It would have put restrictions on some of our downtown areas and what we wanted to do there without getting some government permission if it went into the park service and things like that. So there's more opportunities to go after funding. Right now, it's trying to figure out what's our alternative, what's our priorities, and then these projects have come up. I'll let Jeff add anything, but I'll also say that right now, the funding is great to get. We're kind of at design project management capacity. So while we're standing up our project management software and trying to figure all that out right now, Jeff and his team we've got a lot of stuff to actually get built and get on the ground. So we're looking at next phase to try to do something with that walkway.
Yeah, I just want to add that I worked with Nate Libby earlier this year, and we did put in for this same funding for this fiscal year for that project. So we're hoping to get that approved over the next winter. It did get very expensive, as Kevin was saying, with the restrictions. So the design turned into really a 400-foot bridge under the bridge. So it's turned into almost a $4 million project.
Oh, wow. Okay. And the only other thing I would just say is that I noticed that the Red Shop renovations is on here. Probably have to check with the Historical Review Society if you want to paint it.
That's actually not part of this project. It's shown on here, but
It's just
not in
listed
this.
on here, so this isn't going to be part of the, when you were talking about removing that second pedestrian bridge, you know, the one thought that I have is just like, anytime you're trying to access space, the more pathways you have in order to do it, makes it more usable. And so that's just something to think about. I don't know if there's something else you can squeeze out, but.
And can I add that we are planning to come back to the council in one of the next couple of meetings to go over the master plan for the whole park with the consultant who's working on that. So we'll have more chance for discussion on these.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Chittum.
Thank you. There are 5 colored dash boxes on this first sheet. The walkway under the Longley Bridge, which we talked about, the pavilion, the canal landscaping in yellow, the Oxford Street streetscape in red, and the pedestrian bridge in salmon. My understanding is that the walkway under the Longley Bridge and the pedestrian bridge across the upper canal are not included, and the only 3 projects with the 3.9 are the blue, yellow, and red dotted areas. Is that correct?
Correct. I don't have a color copy, but the walkway under the bridge was not part of this. I'm not sure why it's shown on here.
Nor was the pedestrian bridge
The
over
pedestrian
the canal.
bridge was our suggestion to remove once the funding was cut from what we asked.
So the 3.9 million is sufficient to design and build the community pavilion and the improvements on both sides of the upper canal.
Right.
Thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Any further questions, councilors? Yes, Councillor Chittum.
Yes, on the second page, the smaller of the 2 projects, refresh my memory, this is concerning the pump house, did we convey that pump house with the property that we conveyed to Platts, or did we retain it?
It hasn't been conveyed yet, but it has been approved to be conveyed, yes.
Okay, were there conditions on that that would require us to make any improvements to it? Because I'm looking at the red dotted dashed line around that.
Right.
Are we planning on doing anything with that?
No, we're not. So, and there was $200,000 as part of this that was proposed to go towards that. So I'm assuming we're not going to want to spend that on a building that we don't own.
That'd be a good idea.
So I would look to use that money towards additional work on Beach Street, because.
Is there any way that money, and this is perhaps a question for Director Roy, is there any way that money can be applied to the $3.9 million grant?
I don't believe it can be transferred to another project. It can be used for anything that was part of the original request in that project.
Okay, all right. That's too bad, because it would be nice to have that little pedestrian bridge, even though 200,000 only covers a third of it. So, just a thought. Thank you.
Anything further? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Thank you.
Item number 21.
Item 20.
Thank you.
Item 20, resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate grant funding for the 2023 Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund for vacuum excavation truck for lead service line inventory up to $828,730. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the city to accept and appropriate grant funding for the 2023 Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund for vacuum excavation truck for lead service line inventory up to $828,730.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Counselor Gallant. Director Gagne, if you can kick us off, please.
Yes.
And include what this truck actually does.
Sure. I'll start out with, it says vacuum excavation. We also call it hydro excavation. Basically, you are doing a no-dig. If you're in, we talk about dig safe and excavation permits. So this allows, going through a lawn area basically around a water shutoff to identify what the customer side of the water service is. So based on federal and state regulations, we're required to submit an inventory of all services that are connected to our system throughout the city. So we're working on that now. We've been working on it for a couple years. We've been using as-built information, record drawings, so permitting information, date of construction, all of these things to try to quantify what services are considered lead. Right now, I'm not aware of any lead services in the city of Lewiston. However, if you look at my memo, we had about 4,200 unknown in the city. So we may not know the city side, we may not know the customer side. We've been trying to get into customers' basements because that's one way you can identify what a customer's service is. If it's a galvanized pipe and lead, then it needs to be removed. We need to notify the property owner, and we've got a certain timeline to do that. So funding has come back this spring where the state said, we got all this federal money. It's to help water utilities figure out what our customer service is made out of. So this funding came available after we put our LCIP in the fall, after we submitted our budget for FY25 this spring. I had said to my ops manager, Nate, I said, just put it in if you think that's a piece of equipment that you would use. Last thing I want to do is get a piece of equipment that's going to sit there. So he thought that was the best way because we haven't been able to get in customers' basements. Customer surveys are generally inaccurate, and we need to figure out what's going on and come up with a plan. So they put the application in. We found out that we received or were eligible for this money in June of this year. Kind of sat on it, kind of gave some pushback. We had some things going on, some staff changes, well, a lot of projects. So we're here tonight to ask for you to receive this funding. It was for an amount up to the $828,730. We are not looking to spend that much money. It's a 50% grant, 55%, excuse me, that's what they call principal forgiveness. And then the remainder of it is a 10-year at 0%. So that's why we came up with that number, and it's actually a $587,000 expected purchase price. We would fund the remainder of that on the 0% rate for 10 years at $26,415. Basically, it's like our we have a big yellow truck that goes around and cleans catch basins that does not have a nozzle on the front, but it has the vacuum hose on the front and telescopes down. The other unit that we have is on the sewer utility. That one we call the jetter. It's got a big nozzle reel on the front. We actually send that up the sewer pipe to clean and pull back debris, and then we have a vacuum hose in the same location off the front. So this vacuum or hydro excavation truck is very similar with all the equipment on it. However, there will not be a reel in the front, and that vacuum nozzle is actually going to be off the back of the truck. That allows better access, better control, and we're not coming around the side of the vehicle, and this is better access. So this is the vehicle that we're looking to purchase.
Thank you. Councilor Najin.
I just have a few questions. So the grant that was given or awarded is for this specific piece of equipment, right? Like
It is for equipment. It is for equipment to investigate water service lines in accordance with the lead copper rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question there's 4,000, approximately 4,000 water service connections that we're not familiar with what it's actually made of. Is that correct?
We cannot determine based on what the material type is. Correct. We have unknown age, unknown pipe type.
When we first started this up until today, do you have like an estimation of how many times we've actually found lead pipes? I'm just interested in kind of understanding, because lead poisoning is obviously a very serious thing, right? And if
Absolutely.
it's not within the water supply that we're maintaining, and it's actually connected to the house as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, how...
So the lead copper rule is a multi-pronged approach. The priority typically has been in an older city like Lewiston, lead paint. So lead paint abatement and the building envelope has been the highest priority for the city, I know through code and everybody for health-wise. Through renovations and through decades of working on lead paint, I've always brought up that we need to be concerned with your old pipes, whether it's lead joints, lead solder got changed out over a decade ago, but you still have lead solder available for electrical. We've seen where people have renovated buildings and reintroduced fresh lead into their building envelope. So water safety is very important. I'm going to take this moment just to say never use hot water from their tap, hot water from your hot water tank to use for cooking or drinking. If you want to make hot tea or coffee or cook, please let your water run on the cold water side, fill your pot up, heat it up. That's the safest drinking water you can get. Hot water tanks, hot water piping is not made for drinking water. It's made for cleaning, bathing. So that's public notice out there for that. We have not uncovered any connected lead service lines. That's not to say they weren't in there 30 years ago, but I know that since I've been with the city involved with water lines, we have not found what's classified as a lead service line. Now, there are parts that are still lead. It's what's called a lead gooseneck, so it's less than 3 feet in length. It comes off from an old cast iron main, and that's initially how they were making these connections for downstream was either brass, galvanized, and different types of pipe material. We did find an abandoned foundation just last week. My ops manager was pretty excited about it because it was an old foundation. It was off an old main that had been discontinued decades ago. So we actually found a piece of lead service pipe. It was less than an inch in diameter. So I hope that we don't find any, but if we do, we're going to act on it in accordance with taking care of the drinking water for that customer in accordance with the regulations. But that's the goal, is to get all the lead out.
And you're making the recommendation as well as the city administrator to move forward with the purchase of this?
Yes.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the grant is up to $828,000, but you're looking to spend $587, just the amount of money that would be necessary to purchase the equipment.
Correct.
All right, and that keeps the burden on the water ratepayers lower because the 10-year payback of the 45% non-forgivable wouldn't include anything that we're not using to buy the truck.
Absolutely.
Okay, there are obviously ongoing operational and maintenance costs associated with this vehicle. Is there any requirement that the vehicle be used exclusively on the lead service line discovery program?
The requirements that I'm aware of is more on the financial side, where we have enterprise funds. Those funds are used specifically, kind of like general fund. So we don't want to subsidize one fund for another. So we have used the sewer factor for a water emergency because the hole was so wet. But it's not going out there doing water utility work. So this water truck would be exclusively used for hydro excavations, for water services, for water excavations and whatnot. Occasionally it may be used for an emergency that comes up.
Is there anything that prohibits it from being used for non-water?
In talking with other utilities, I'm not aware.
Okay. I'm assuming that this vehicle will last longer than the 10 years that we're paying it off. Once the loan has been paid off and the 55% has been forgiven, then this is wholly owned by the city of Lewiston. Is there any other purpose to which Public Works could then use that vehicle, having paid for it with the water fund, and mindful of the fact that we don't want to cross-pollinate enterprise funds? Could this be used for other purposes?
Hydro excavation has been used with our other Vector when it's needed because it's difficult. You have conduit, you have sensitive, it's difficult to actually dig So we've used hydro excavation in the past, and that's what this could be used for.
Okay. And is there a variable bore size of the hole that it drills?
You're basically using a hydro jet wand that you're dumping a ton of water in to cut up the soil and everything in the ground, and then using the vac tube to suck it out and add enough water so it doesn't clog the pipe. And then you'll decant the water and dump the soil in a fill site.
Okay, but how big is the hole when you're done?
It's as big as you need it to be.
Okay.
You can make it fairly small to get around a curb stop, or you can spend a little effort and make it larger. But generally, we're not going to put a person inside of the excavation. It would be to visually observe, maybe make some small repairs, but we follow shoring and excavation policy and ordinances as well. So if we're going any depth, we're going to dig it and put an excavation box in there.
I'm going somewhere with this. It may not seem like it, but I heard you say that DigSafe is not required if you're using hydro excavation?
Correct.
All right, so here's where I'm going. We put a lot of signposts in. We put a new signpost in at the end of Russell Street on Sabata Street. I think it's weekly now on schedule. And every time we do that, we have to DigSafe it. Can this hydro excavator be used to put signposts in and avoid the whole process of DigSafing?
It's possible. The reality is we're not putting a foundation in, we're not pouring concrete. We're putting those signposts just in soil. So we're just driving those in. So the purpose to hydro excavate is to open it up. You'd have to backfill it and compact it in some way, probably taking more effort than it is to wait for a 3-day dig safe. But we consider it whatever is more efficient.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yep.
Thank you.
If we're putting in a 4x4 or 6x6, it could be applicable there.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. And yes, we anticipate this lasting more than the 10-year note on it. This typically will not go out in the wintertime because of freezing conditions. It's typically when a lot of the road salt's down there, and that is what's going to eat up a vehicle, is all the road and salt treatment.
So Phil tells us.
It's true. That's it.
Yes, further questions from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Should there ever be a holiday parade, we can include this vehicle.
It'd make a great touch-a truck.
Clean and white it is.
Now I believe we're up to item 21.
Item 21, resolve authorizing the city to participate as an equal partner through an MOU with the Auburn Water District in a municipal partnership initiative to complete Lake Shore Drive culvert replacement to protect Lake Auburn drinking water quality and waiver from filtration at an estimated cost of $375,000.
May I have a motion?
Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the city to participate as an equal partner through an MOU with the Auburn Water District in a municipal partnership initiative to complete Lake Shore Drive culvert replacement to protect Lake Auburn drinking water quality and waiver from filtration at an estimated cost of $375,000.
Now you may have a motion, Mr. Mayor.
May I have a, thank you, Councilor Chittum. My apologies, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Najin, second by Councilor Gallant. Director Gagne,
Yes. Good evening. I think we've talked about Lake Auburn, but is our only drinking water source. The pictures that were included in also my memo talk about how that December storm, as well as other storms, that one specifically in the picture was in May. That watershed area of that sub-catchment has caused the culverts to overtop. The culvert is a corrugated metal culvert that's on Lake Shore Drive. That's part of the city of Auburn and the main DOT maintenance area. We had a conversation, Auburn Water, Lewiston Water, as well as MDOT and the drinking water program, and how DOT can better support and protect our drinking water source, Lake Auburn. We brought this up to them. They were like, that culvert's not going to be changed for several years. We've got higher priorities, bigger demands. The discussion came about that they could support us in this endeavor with an MPI. The benefit of that is that we get to choose how this culvert gets replaced. They would strictly go in there and put in a box culvert or a open bottom arch, which is the new standard that they need to adhere to. My biggest concern as being the licensed treatment operator and overseeing this is that we would export more color, turbidity, nutrients out of that wetland directly into Lake Auburn than what we've already seen. So the existing culvert's acting as a restriction. Yes, it overtopped the road, but we're throttling that flow by making it wide open without any other considerations or design. I think we put our waiver and our drinking water quality at risk. That's why I'm in support of this and saying that I think being a 50-50 partner with the Auburn Water District, they've asked if we participate in this, which means the city of Lewiston would be 25% into this project. It's going to take design, concept, plan, spec, and estimate. It's a reimbursement from DOT. We're probably looking at 2 years, at least 2 budget years to do this. I think that this has caused issues. You can see from the picture, hopefully you got the color version. That May storm, it looked like straight, strong, dark roast coffee coming out of that wetland right into the lake. And there's nothing we could do about it. You couldn't sandbag it. We couldn't divert the flow. Right now, we've been reporting through the Watershed Commission, but also to you, that I think our staff did an excellent job by opening the dam and short-circuiting these flows that we've had this spring. We've got excellent water quality despite of this, but that may not be the case. So we'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Gagne. Yes, Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So you said the culvert that MDOT would normally put in there would actually allow more nutrients and soil and everything to flow into the lake. So what sort of culvert are you proposing?
Right now, that's going to be up to the consultant that we're looking to hire. My concern is that DOT would come in and strictly look at it as a hydraulic issue, right? Flow capacity. The water quality standards they have are for stream and in-bed stream and migration of all the flora and fauna going through those culverts. So the reality is they're not looking at what's maybe coming out of that wetland. Most wetlands act as a treatment zone. So we have 2 major inlets into the lake. The north end is the dam of the basin. That is acting as sediment control. That is doing biouptake. That's taking a peak if there's capacity and stilling it and letting it. The other one is Townsend Brook, and that's a big one that comes in from Turner. This Townsend Brook has less flow than the north, but it has higher phosphorus. So that wetland immediate north of Lakeshore Drive is processing phosphorus. We've had some studies done with Bates College, and they've said that another export that's an issue for Lake Auburn is the export of iron. So while it may not be phosphorus that could be exported out, that was the concern of some of the wetland material coming out that's just more iron. Iron very temporarily binds phosphorus. That's why, and then when you have a bacteria decay and you have the change in pH in the water, then it frees up that phosphorus and you start loading an algae bloom cycle. And that's what we experienced with the fish kill in 2010 through 2012. So it's a 7-year flush rate on the lake, try to get the phosphorus out. It's a long answer to what we're looking to do. It's a complex issue when we're looking to get wetland retention, wetland treatment upstream that DOT would not take into consideration. These are specifically watershed issues, and we want to do this with our partner, the Auburn Water District.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Director Gagne, and thank you for your explanation. I'd like to talk a little bit about the MPI program. Does this put Lewiston Water and the Auburn Water District in the driver's seat of planning, designing, and constructing this project so long as we comport with some DOT requirements?
Yes.
But it takes the entire project out of DOT's oversight, and we are then in control of it.
Correct.
So DOT would be giving us $750,000, and sort of checking the plans to make sure we know what we're talking about.
It's a reimbursement, and they're definitely a partner, but it's similar to a locally administered project in which we would be doing the scoping, the design, the review, in adherence with the initial proposal and the MPI agreement.
Okay. And would Lewiston and Auburn Water District jointly consider, I know we have agreements with consulting firms, service agreements. Would we be using those, or do we coordinate with Auburn Water? How does this work?
Auburn Water's taking the lead on this.
Okay.
We've partnered in the past, and if they like our procurement, we partner. If they want to go another direction, then we've mutually agreed on several consultants, and they may I would expect this would go out to a special RFP.
Okay.
For design services.
Thank you, Director.
Yep, thank you.
A public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Councilor Najin.
I would just say, in the spirit of cooperation, I'm supportive of, well, obviously, the cost of a filtration system's quite a lot just on the first time, never mind the maintenance constantly. So, and I think that Lewiston has a better working relationship with the Auburn Water District as a partner now. So, I'm supportive of this.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Administrator O'Malley.
Director Roy would like to chime in on the resolve. We would have to amend that.
Director Roy, please give us some guidance.
So there was an email earlier today explaining that we did receive our premiums for our 2023 bond. At the time that Director Gagne put together his memo and the appropriation, that had not come in yet, and we didn't know exactly what we were going to receive. So if you'd like to amend the resolve, we could use the 2023 premiums to cover that 117 instead of it going into the operations in fiscal year 26.
I'm sure we're amenable to that. Councilor Chittum?
Yes, again, I'd like to repeat it so I understand. The $116,178 that had been proposed to be put in the 2026 operating budget would now be paid with funds that are coming from, and I've lost that part.
The 2023 bond sale that we just had,
Yes.
the premiums.
Okay. So I would like to make that amendment, if somebody could help me put the words together.
Madam Clerk, could you work with our Director of Finance to construct the appropriate language?
I don't know.
Sure. So, So the proposed amendment would be to amend the 7th whereas clause on the resolve, the very last line, and to strike out the phrase FY 2026 budget and replace it with 2023 bond sale premiums. Water bond sale premiums. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Chittum.
I forget who moved this. If I did, then I will make it a friendly amendment.
I don't believe this meets the test for a friendly amendment, Madam Clerk.
It was moved by Councilor Najin, seconded by Councilor Gallant.
Oh, right, but is this, one second, Councilor Najin. Madam Clerk, this is substantial, correct? Or could this be a friendly amendment?
It probably would be better to have it be a traditional amendment, and there's no question.
Okay. Can I have a motion on this amendment? And can you read it one more time, Madam Clerk?
Sure. The 7th whereas clause in the resolve, the very last line, strike the phrase fiscal year 2026 budget and replace it with 2023 water bond sale premiums.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Chittum, second by Councilor Gallant.
Just as a
Yes,
quick,
Councilor Najin, you're recognized.
wouldn't we have to move through the first motion since it was on the floor, or no?
No.
Okay.
Further discussion on this amendment? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0. And now the vote before you is the main motion with the amendment embedded in it. Counselor from Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Excellent.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Director Gagne. Engineer Bully, thank you. Item number 22.
Item number 22, order authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 181 Webster Street. Requested action to approve the order authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 181 Webster Street.
May I have a
So
motion,
moved.
please? Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Counselor Glant. Discussion? Counselor Sol, did you have something? No. Oh, okay. Counselor Najin, yes.
I'm not quite sure if the director's still here. Oh, yeah, he is. This is part of the process of moving forward. The condemnation proceeding that we had, is that correct? Is this the same property?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the same property that we had last meeting.
And this helps to
regarding the
move forward
condemnation.
the,
Yes.
okay, perfect.
Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 23.
Item number 23, appointment to the Lewiston Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Requested action to confirm the mayor's nomination and to appoint the following resident as a member of the Board of Commissioners to the Lewiston Housing Authority to be effective as of September 18th, 2024. Donna Matthew, term to expire September 17th, 2029.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum.
Second.
Second by Counselor Harriman. So yes, I'm reappointing Donna. Discussion from the council. Counselor Chittum.
Yes, I spoke with some of the members of the Lewiston Housing Commission. I'm sorry, I'm losing it now. This is a reappointment, but there was no application process. Is that no application in the packet? Is that standard procedure on a
No, I'm going
reappointment?
to say that's a clerical error on my part,
Okay.
Counselor. I apologize. There should have been, she did submit an application, so we do have her contact information on file. It is a reappointment, as the mayor noted.
Yep.
She did submit an application. We should have included it, and I think we just failed to do that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Counselor Najin.
I guess this question's directed towards you, Mr. Mayor. At what point in time are we going to appoint one of the counselors to the commission?
It does, I'm sorry, thank you. Madam Clerk, do you know if a counselor sits on this?
A counselor
commission?
doesn't sit on it. The makeup of the committee is defined in state statutes, and I believe it is 5, I don't know if it says residents. I'd actually have to check the actual language, but there is no slot for a counselor on there. And our past practice, counselor, has been that if a council seat isn't defined on any board and committee, we don't appoint a counselor to that. We appoint residents to those seats and not a counselor.
Counselors are residents, though. I'm just,
They are, but you are in a different classification category since you're an elected official.
I just, again, with the Lewiston Housing Authority, I really would like some transparency on the meetings, the process, and all of it. So, at some point in time, I think that we should take some consideration and maybe asking the Lewiston Housing Authority if possibly a counselor could, or a member of staff could sit in on the meetings.
The meetings are public, are they not, Madam Clerk?
I believe they are.
Yeah, and I'm
They're
sure
a
the minutes.
quasi-governmental.
Right, I'm sure the minutes are available.
I would have to check their website, I'm not sure.
Okay. Further questions or comments from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0. I'm sorry, 6-1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now up to reports and updates from the council. Councilor Glant.
Still looking for bodies for the senior committee. We did have our first meeting. We did vote in a president but the rest of the members did not want offices, so I currently have 3 openings for officers, and I have 3 empty slots. So if you haven't found someone from your ward, please do. I would like to ask that maybe we can negotiate with the mayor on one of his appointees that might fill someone else's slot if another body comes available, that he could then appoint, if that's possible, to do something like that.
If the mayor was willing to, I guess, withdraw his appointment, I'm not sure. I'd have to take a look at the language. I'm not sure that any of our policies address that.
I couldn't find any.
Right, I don't believe.
So I'm just out of curiosity that if we had somebody that wasn't another person that would fit in the slot missing, that maybe the mayor would be so kind as to do that. Thank you.
Yes, I will, I guess. I had a quick question. Madam Clerk, approximately how many residents are in each ward?
About 5,000.
Surely the councilors could find somebody. I realize it's challenging to fill positions these days. Further reports and updates from the council? Okay. We're now up to new business, should there be any. Councilor Sol, yes.
The safety committee, is there anything being done with that?
Yes, great question. So, yes, I'm in contact with the committee members, and I'm waiting for someone to return back from travel.
And you'll update us and let us
Absolutely.
know? Because I'm getting a lot of questions, just with all of the community stuff that's happening, so.
Yes, no, and there's a number of community meetings that many of us have been to, but yes, there's been some extenuating circumstances, but I hope to have things wrapped up soon.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Glant.
It's more of a question. We have all this problems with gun shooting and stuff, and the police chief led me at least to believe that most of the guns have been stolen or taken from someone else. I'm not 100% sure that's correct, but could we have an ordinance in the city that says if someone leaves a gun in their vehicle and it's broken into or it's taken away, that we can do something about that? I know the state doesn't have a statute, but I'd like to think that residents need to understand that they have to lock up their stuff or not leave them in the vehicle. Can we have any kind of bite or anything that could help that? I guess Mike ask the deputy city administrator.
I can have the police chief weigh in on that. I think what you're kind of describing is someone leaving a loaded vehicle in an unlocked vehicle, a loaded gun in an unlocked vehicle. I think that would come up to the district attorney's office in terms of criminal charges. If that's what you're looking for, would be a lot more than a city ordinance violation, which would only be a fine. And then if somebody doesn't show up, there's no real teeth to it. I think in my conversations that I've had with the chief, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. We are seeing nationwide where parents are now being held responsible for the acts of their children, and the latest shooting down in Georgia. I think that's kind of similar to what happens with a gun, how the person gets it. You can charge a parent with endangering the welfare of a child. If a child takes a loaded gun that doesn't have a trigger lock or isn't locked up and they shoot themselves or shoot someone else. So I think that would be the better route to go. But we could have a conversation, or I can have a conversation with the police chief to have him weigh in on his thoughts on that. But I think using state law that we have right now would be have more teeth to it than city trying to enact an ordinance.
All right, thank you. I just, so much concern with the public. I don't know that they realize that a lot of this is happening because people may be leaving their weapon in the vehicle unattached or unlocked.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does happen. People will leave a loaded handgun in their glove box or in their car, and then someone will enter the car and steal it. And sometimes those cars are even unlocked, which is not proper handling of a firearm.
At that point, the resident should report it stolen, correct?
My hope is that they are, yes, reporting it stolen, yes.
Okay. Councilor Najin, yes.
Just to piggyback on Councilor Gallant's question, I know that maybe it's a bit performative, but our current fine for discharge of a firearm in the prohibited zone, I believe, is $500, and I believe the state allowance for a fine is $5,000 from a municipality. I'm wondering if that would.
Are you talking about discharging a firearm not in the firearm
correct
area of the city? Well, it all depends on where it is. I mean, if you fire a gun here on Knox Street, that's going to be a lot different in terms of the criminal charge than if you're out on River Road and you're in the apple orchard and you're shooting. Was a little different. So if are you saying the same line of a city ordinance, or?
Yeah, what I'm thinking about right now, so there's two ordinances that are out there right now, that one is rarely enforced because it's difficult to catch people like in the act, and that's the fireworks ordinance, right? And the second one is shots fired, right? And so in that, I think whether it's fireworks or firearms, generally speaking, like when you hear a pop, you get a little nervous, I think, in certain parts of the city. And so the question would be, like, and again, it's a bit performative maybe, but the maximum fine that we could levy as a municipality is like $5,000, right?
You're saying right, and I don't know.
I think it is. I'm wondering if we could.
So you're looking
there would
to
be any
you're looking to
value in
increase the city ordinance fine for discharging a firearm
and also the firework piece.
and fireworks.
Yeah.
Okay. We can look into that too.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Chittum.
Thank you. To continue that conversation and expand it a little bit, we met with our legislative delegation twice now, and they have invited us to submit to them ideas for statewide legislation, realizing that that's a much higher hurdle than even we in Lewiston have when we enact ordinances. I think we ought to take them up on that, and I'm wondering whether it would be better to do that as individuals and suggest items for them to investigate individually, or should we have a workshop and decide that we want to propose specific items to the legislative delegation as a legislative body?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are, we are free to contact our state legislators as ourselves. The council could, yes, we could certainly have another workshop, but the council could also draft a letter to send to our legislators that might achieve the same effect.
And when you say that, Mr. Mayor, you say the council could draft a letter. That means that we've all agreed to do that letter. There are two options here. One is for each of us individually to become more involved citizens than we already are, and the other is for us to act as a body. And I don't know which would be received with greater strength in Augusta. I suspect that if we came together as a body and I have a list of 6 items here that I would like to propose for discussion, but if the council feels that it's better for me as an individual, as a private citizen, to communicate with each of my representatives and my senator, I'm happy to do that. I just want to know how we should proceed if we decide we want to do this as a body.
Yes, Councillor Nagy.
One thought that I have in that, I do think that it's more powerful if it comes from the body. I do, but I also think that the workshop process isn't always great because it doesn't allow for feedback from the constituents, and so possibly we as individual councilors should have some type of public meeting forum with our constituents, allow the constituents in order to speak to us about the concerns, because I can tell you right now that the concerns of gun violence in the community are real, and it is an issue that keeps coming up. So I'm just thinking that maybe if we do a process more like that, where we make ourselves available to our constituents, and then we can meet together in order to decide what, if anything, we are sending to the state as a body. It might be helpful, and I think there's a need for our constituency to be able to speak to us in an open forum about, as opposed to just a phone call or an email. Just my thought.
Yes, Councillor Chittum.
Are you speaking of our constituents speaking to us one-on-one individually, or as a group?
I think that if we made it a public meeting, like even if we did it like Callahan Hall, something like a town hall type of thing, right? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking of a way that's less restrictive than the city council meetings, and can happen on a different time so that people can actually, some people who can't attend these meetings would, we might get a better turnout and better feedback, I don't know.
I like that idea very much. In fact, that would answer a lot of questions that I still have after 9 months on the job about how we effectively, transparently comport with all of the rules that we've established for ourselves and that Augusta has established for us as a legislative body, and make some progress. I feel personally that we've been doing a lot of good things, but it feels to me like we're spinning wheels too. I mean, there are some big issues. We've been dealing with a lot of minutia. And I wonder if perhaps on this list of bullet points that I have for our legislative delegation, would that take the form, if we decide as a body to do that, of a resolve, Madam Clerk?
If you were deciding on which you want to send to the legislature?
Yeah, we want all of the Christmas trees
Right.
in Maine to be blue, and as a body, we've voted this. So would that be a resolve?
Yes.
Okay.
To then send to the legislature as a unified voice from the council?
So that to me suggests that one way to do this would be simply put an agenda item on a future meeting to say here are items, here's a resolve. But that happens sort of in a vacuum because we all haven't had a chance to talk about it amongst ourselves or with the public. So there's the rub.
I mean, we could always, Madam Clerk, I mean, we could hold a workshop amongst ourselves or simply debate it at the agenda item.
Yes, either one. I mean, it sounds like it would be well-suited for a workshop-type discussion and topic.
Councilor Najin.
There's nothing in state statute or under our charter that disallows us from holding a public meeting outside of council, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, as long as we do it in the process in which is prescribed by charter and state law, then we could, for instance, have a council town hall at Callahan Hall, for instance.
Yes.
And I think we may very well want to do that because we don't have a lot of back and forth dialogue with the public in general, right? Unless it's a phone call or an email, or I caught you at Hannaford on a Sunday. So.
And just to clarify, Councilor Najin, this town hall, one of the purposes would be to solicit feedback to how we should, what should we ask of our state legislators?
That would be the feel of it, yes, exactly. And I think listening to some of the safety concerns that residents have in different parts of the city might be valuable for different councilors as well.
Yeah, if that was the goal, I would say we, 1 second, Councilor Glant. If that was the goal, I think that we should loop in the state delegation simply because I just, having a forum that we're holding to figure out what constituents are asking of us to ask the state delegation seems a little, yeah. Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. Sitting here rather confused. So you're saying we should have a town meeting to get information for our state representatives, but have the state representatives here at the same time? Is that what you're saying? I'm directing a question.
It's not what I said.
Okay, so you want us just to meet with the public by ourselves and take their concerns to the state legislators?
To sit, after we've had an open forum discussion with the constituents, then possibly we could work on a resolve together that we could send as a body to the state to say, these are things that our Lewiston residents are concerned about around the gun violence issues. Can we ask for these things,
So question to the city clerk, how long can a resolve be? Because you could have 75 things. So, I mean, you're going to have to have some kind of order or grouping that we're just not going to send. If you send a 10-page document to them, they ain't going to read it. Let's be realistic, okay? They're going to see what's in there. So, I understand what you're saying and getting the word for the public, at which time then we would disseminate the important items to send forward?
And also to have some dialogue amongst ourselves, because I think there's a big challenge with the communication that we have under the FOIA laws, right? And so like we can talk here, but it's structured in a certain way, right? And if we call a public meeting and everybody's aware of it, then we can have conversations that are back and forth conversations and also include the constituents. I just think that it might maybe get some traction for us as well, so that whatever we put forward isn't written by one of us, right? Or it's actually, there's dialogue happening that is both transparent in the public view, that helps us be better at what we're putting forward. That's all.
And I understand where you're coming from, but I have not seen his list. I haven't looked
Neither
over his
have I.
shoulder. But I'd be willing to bet you it's 2 of the 4 I don't like, knowing him as a person. So we're gonna, in public, with our constituents out here, argue over things that we don't all agree on, don't look good.
We're going to have considered debate, possibly, because we all respect each other, and we're doing the best things for the city.
Yeah, good luck with that.
All right, well, I guess, where would you like to go with this at this very instant, Councilor Najin?
Well, we can take this offline, I think, but I would love to have some type of constituent town hall style meeting.
And if that is the desire of a majority of the council, I suggest that the town hall listening session be a different meeting than discussion amongst ourselves. Because otherwise, that's just, yeah. Sorry, Councilor Longchamps, did you have something?
Yes, I'm just a little confused, but is this meeting that you're calling going to be about gun violence too?
It's going to be primarily about gun violence.
Because I don't know if you went to the forum that we had at the high school, not this last one, but the first one. There were a lot of people almost fist fighting, and it can get very, very ugly. So seriously, we have to be very careful with that type of meeting. I've been to them. So just saying. I think it's very important to hear from people, but I just think that may, or it will, invite a lot of, yeah, it's a tough one.
Let's, maybe at this hour, I suggest that we all think on it for the time being. If that's amenable to the council. Further new business. Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready to adjourn. I have a motion, or I'm sorry, please.
Yes, motion to adjourn, if there's a motion.
Councilor Sol.
Second.
Second by Councilor Najin. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you to our faithful audience members and viewers at home. Have a wonderful evening, Lewiston.